And if you don't see the record, there will be
You can
hit it.
Okay.
You are now recording. It says recording.
Okay.
Hello?
Yeah, I'm sorry. Hold on. I'm trying to get back to the screen
You
sharing.
hear about solar? It's not open right now, but you can walk around it. Phoenix, you can rent it.
Oh gosh, what am I? Wait, I know what I'm doing, I think. Oh, Dave, I'm screwing this up.
Don't worry. We are patiently waiting. Take
That's
your time.
You're
Yeah.
already sharing your screen, but we see your email. So you are already sharing.
oh, are you?
I'm looking for Dave. I'm looking for Dave's video again. Okay. Stop share, resume share. Oh gosh. Oh, I'm sharing is paused.
Oh,
So what?
I know why. If you go to the top and stop share or new share,
Oh,
then you can share again and share the right type of screen.
okay. But it's not, I can't. Okay, here we are. I see everybody. I want to share the screen. But so okay, so now it keeps taking me back here though.
Do you have the screen you want open? Because you have to open it before you can share that screen.
Well, I had it open. It was on the video. It was.
If you open the video and then you stop share and then
Jesus Christ.
then you have to share that video because it asks you.
Oh, I know what I'm doing wrong.
What you want to share.
1 second. 1 second.
There you go. There's the link on the right. Looks good.
You see it
Don't
now?
do anything. We're good.
Okay.
So this is my house. Panels are on the west side of the house, and the lower left-hand corner is a time-lapse video of the sunlight hitting the panels, and above it is the real-time monitoring that happens that we get from the end phase monitoring. So you can see kind of a one-to-one mapping as the sun is coming over my house. Move your mouse down a little bit, John. As the sun is coming over the house, you can see the panels are lighting up. Now, ironically, I have a utility pole, an electrical pole, that blocks my panels in the afternoon. So I have electricity blocking my electricity. But what this is showing that with a microinverter, you can shade one panel and it'll affect that panel, but it won't affect the whole string. And that's why I picked Enphase for this particular project. Now this will flip to the next video with a little bit of luck. And there we go. So this is the Ypsilanti Freight House. This is where I'm actually standing right now. I'm actually standing right on that thing. This was a project we did a couple of years ago. And we used a product called Unisolar's PVLs. They're out of business now, but it was actually a really cool product in that it's like a giant sticker that's 16 feet long and 15.5 inches wide. So here's some volunteers who are up on the roof. And the only tricky part is to get the standing metal seam roof very clean. So we had to, wash it down with soap, and then they wanted us to actually like spray it down with isopropyl alcohol and get it really clean, and then just lay down this sticker. You'll see that right here. So here we're pulling off the backing, and we're sticking it on the roof, And then we got like a roller for putting down linoleum to really press it on there. And then all the wires are up at the top, and they go into the ridge cap, and then all the wiring is done in the attic. So this is a very small system, but it's ideal for a standing seam roof. And it's kind of funny, this is a historic structure, and from most angles of the building, you can't even see it. So it's just a small portion of it. This is probably enough power they have a little coffee house on the one end of this building, and it's probably enough power to power that. This is another time-lapse video. This is an ex-mayor, maybe 2 mayors ago. And I really love this project because it was kind of like a barn raising. We had families, we had little kids running around, and these are all volunteers. And again, this is just kind of showing how it's done. We put in some flashings under the shingles. Then you put up some aluminum rails. There's the lag bolts that put the flashings on, some volunteers. And then you put on these optimizers or microinverters, and then the panels go up. And all the wiring is plug and play. It's all just snaps together, no real electrical work. And in the lower right-hand corner, you can see we're missing a panel right now. That's where I was doing the junction box. On the back of the building, you can see a little white box. That's the inverter. So all the power on the roof there comes down a piece of conduit to the back of the building, gets converted from DC to AC, and then enters the basement and hooks into the breaker panel. Just a little sound check. Everything good?
Yep.
Okay. And I believe this system, they don't use a lot of power. This one actually, I think they're 100% solar powered. We actually have 2 ex-mayors that have solar on their roofs. There's the mayor, Amanda Edmonds. There's another time lapse. I really love these time lapses because it gives you a sense of how it's done. This one I loved because it was like 10 hours from the first lag bolt to backfeeding the grid. So we did it all in one day, all volunteers. There's the flashings again, the rails are up. We put down these little optimizers, and now we're putting down the panels. This is a little bit bigger system. I think it's 10 kilowatts. The inverter you'll see is on the lower left of the building, that little white box. We actually had a retired electrician, wiring that up. And the conduit now is going to go off the left end of the panels and then down to the inverter. I also have a friend with a drone who likes to edit videos, so we got some really fantastic pictures here. And this is a nice project because the neighbor next to him also has it. Actually, this is all done with neighbors. So we kind of have like 3 systems in a row here on this street.
What about all those little things underneath on the screen there? Is there something you had to enable over here?
You're going to have to speak up. I can't hear you.
It's the same thing as,
Is there something you have to enable over here?
okay, it's the same thing as the church.
Okay, but this has more things on it at the bottom.
We don't have to enable anything at the church, right?
Yeah, but it's not Zoom, it's YouTube.
Oh, well, this is YouTube too.
I-
This is YouTube.
Oh, is it? Oh, okay.
Keep going, Dave.
Well, we have it on here, then you always tell
There
me.
it goes. Okay. So this is another project. So we were trying to get a large array, trying to get DT to put a large array in an old landfill we have, and that all fell apart. But they came back and they decided to put one in in a cemetery.
Okay.
So this is the north end of a cemetery where the cemetery people leased land to the DTE, and DTE came in and put in a 800 kilowatt system.
Well, I don't know what's happened.
This is 2,200 panels. And my friend with the drone said it was amazing because he flew over it and then he kept going up and up trying to get the whole thing in one shot. And he was amazed at how high he had to get it all in one frame. This is a very good project. It's a historic cemetery, and they're getting a revenue stream from it to do maintenance and restore old buildings. So it was a very good project. This is another cool project. This is our firehouse. It's now currently 100% solar powered. We initially put on 176 panels, about 50 kilowatts. Again, this was a volunteer project, and it is a ballasted roof-mounted system. And so all of the, there's no penetrations in the roof. All the panels are held on the roof with concrete blocks. You can see them in the little baskets there between the rows. And this was another kind of amazing project that this was done in one day, about 8 hours, maybe, yeah, about 8 hours.
And scroll it up.
And then they put 50 kilowatts on, and then the fire chief saved so much money that he decided to put on another 15 and be 100% solar powered. So we expanded the system about 3 years later. What was nice is all of this is very repetitive. So when volunteers would come, I could show, 2 or 3 people how to do something, and then just kind of let them loose, and they would just kind of like do row after row after row. And then we had an electrician, a solar contractor, actually do the wiring from the panels to the building.
Okay.
On your call if you want to quit here, because it's
Yeah, I think we got to, I apologize, Dave, for cutting you off, but you did a fantastic job. And I
quarter
want
after.
Yep, thank you very much. So we're going to stop here, and then I'm going to stop, and we're going to turn it over now to Ken Zabara of Harvest Energy. Please, folks, please remain on mute while our speakers are speaking, and then when they're done presenting, then we'll have hopefully time for question and answers. So go ahead, Ken.
Hey, how's my audio and video?
It looks
I'll share in a minute.
okay.
So hi everyone. Whoever's named Maureen, I'm not sure who that is, but if you could mute, please. Thank you. So I'm with Harvest Solar, and we traditionally, by the way, this is Sloan. We traditionally do farm and agricultural solar projects, and that's what I was going to showcase. But I'm going to surprise you guys and switch gears, and I wanted to showcase a cooler project that we just finished yesterday, and it's at a school called Mason County Central Schools over by Ludington in Scottville. And it's a cool project because there was just there were so many difficult aspects, and as a lot of you know, schools are just really tough to make work between the tax incentives, the legal and political side of things, net metering policies. So it was a really challenging and interesting project, but we did well. So I've got a real quick PowerPoint to show you some of the details of that. How's that? Will that work, John?
It should, yeah.
All right, let me share here. All right, can you see that there?
Yep.
Okay, so we had 2 arrays. One was at the upper elementary and one was at the high school. They're adjacent to each other, but they were on separate parcels and fed separate meters, and they're each under Category 2 net metering, and we structured it with a power purchase agreement that some of you are familiar with, but I'll get into a little more detail on what that means in a minute. On the bottom right, that was the at the upper elementary school, and I just included a picture there on the left of the racking before we got the panels on. One cool thing that I'll come back to in a second on the next page is, can anybody notice anything interesting about the solar panels here from these pictures? Any volunteers?
Double-sided?
Yeah, bifacial. Yep. So these are bifacial panels, so they generate power off the back side as well. And on my next slide, I'm going to talk about those few things in more detail, but they're really cool panels. All right, so it was approximately 300 kilowatts in total. As a lot of you know, there's a 150 kilowatt net metering limit in Michigan under consumers. And so each one of those individually are within that limit. So with category 2 net metering, in this situation, every kilowatt hour that the solar generates is going to save somewhere between 12 and 13 cents. It's a little bit of an unknown and a little bit of a gray area, because what happens is on category 2, you're consuming for the energy that you consume directly off the solar array, you're saving the full retail rate, which let's call it somewhere between 14 and 15 cents. Including distribution and everything. For excess generation, not on a monthly basis, but on an instantaneous basis, any excess generation that you give to consumers is credited at retail minus distribution, which works out to be around 10 cents. So for simple numbers, think about it that you're consuming some of your solar energy and saving 14 to 15 cents, and you're selling some unknown portion of your solar generation at 10 cents. So your rough average, depending on the timing of your usage and generation, will be somewhere around 12 to 13 cents. So for that so every kilowatt hour that the solar makes, the school will save 12 or 13 cents, and they will pay for that same kilowatt hour. It's about roughly 9.5 cents. There's some escalators baked in there and some different details, but roughly 9.5 cents. So, and the school paid nothing for that. So that's how a power purchase agreement works in general, is that you have some outside investor, that says, hey, I'll pay for the solar system. I'll take the tax incentives. I'll take any grant money, and I'll take all the kickbacks, and I'll sell you the solar kilowatt hours for a rate that's less than what you would have paid consumers. And so this is a win-win for everybody. Harvest set it up and lined up the investor and a broker that helped us with that. And then we built it, we designed it, built it. And so it was a really fun project and interesting. There's a lot that goes into those power purchase agreements, the paperwork, the legal side of things, the land side of things. And then getting everything approved through the school boards. It's been almost 2 years now. It was January of 2019 that the conversation started. So that's how long these kinds of projects can take to develop. The modules are bifacial modules, and they're 380 watt. And you can see that on the back here. You can see on the back of the panels there that there's no back sheet, or a clear back sheet, I should say. And theoretically, they make up to 30% more energy. But realistically, it's probably more like 4 or 5%, maybe up to 8%. It's one of the challenges that is not so obvious, is that you have to, in terms of string sizing, wire sizing, inverter compatibility, DC to AC ratios, all of that, all the electrical design, you have to assume the full 30% gain from the bifacial, from the back side of the panels. So that's one relatively significant hurdle or challenge with bifacial panels. And they're new enough, or we're inexperienced enough with them to not really have much data on actual production increase.
And Ken, where does the sun come from on the back side of the panel?
Well, it's just reflected and ambient, especially with, snow on the ground. So it doesn't get any direct sun. So you're generating the full, it's a 380 watt panel on front side only. So if there was a back sheet and front side only, it's a 380 watt. And then it's up to 30% increase on the back side. We just finished it yesterday. We're still, but next week, over the next week or two, we'll still need some final inspections. Consumers will need to sign the GIOA, things like that, but we're pretty much done. including post driving, racking, modules, inverters, all the wiring and interconnection and testing. It was 22 days and really only 16 or 17 working days. So it was relatively quick. And here's just an example of some of our typical farm projects. We do a little bit of residential here and there, and we do have a handful of larger utility scale projects that we're doing right now. But most of what we do are projects just like this at farms where they're medium scale, let's say 20 kilowatts to 150 kilowatts at a farm or rural business. That's kind of our sweet spot. So there's some examples of those projects. So I'm going to stop sharing and take any questions, and then I'm going to walk outside real quick and show you my very simple, basic net metered 5 kilowatts on my garage roof.
Any questions for Ken?
0. Oh man, I thought I had a good project.
Ken, this is David Aronosti. I missed the beginning of your talk, so I didn't catch the school system. But regarding the investor, do you know, is this one single investor or an investor pool?
This happens to be a single individual investor. You know, these kinds of projects are often either a company or investment group that do these projects on a regular basis. This one happened to be just a private individual that is familiar with solar energy and those kinds of investments and is doing it himself.
And so for the sum invested, that individual could take a tax credit of 26% or 30%, depending on when it got through. Is that correct?
That's correct. And that reminds me, I forgot an interesting piece of it. Some of you may be familiar with a USDA REAP grant that is up to 25% grant for farms and rural businesses. And we actually got some, not the full 25%, but we got a nice piece of grant money through that program. Even though schools are exempt, there was a perfectly clean and legal way to structure that, because schools are not applicable to that program. But the investor, as an LLC, he is a rural small business who happens to be in the business of selling solar kilowatt hours to a school. So that's the way we were able to. So the LLC, that is the owner investor, was the actual applicant for the grant and got awarded, and that helped keep costs and the PPA rates down. And so that was a cool aspect of it as well.
I see. And with that legal angle, that was developed from the investor or from Harvest, or who had that knowledge?
Well, Rick Vanderbeek is the name of the guy at USDA that facilitates or manages that program. And so we worked with him. We were familiar with the program from dealing with farmers every day. And we asked Rick about it, and he said, well, schools are not exempt, but it's perfectly fine if the investor were to, because it's all based on the applicant and the owner of the system, not necessarily the off taker.
Right.
So that's it was kind of our idea, Harvest's idea, but worked closely with USDA on it. So, you know, we didn't want to, you know, throw any red flags or work any loopholes. It was nice and clean.
Thank you.
Yep.
So Ken, why don't you take your quick walk outside and show us what you wanted to show us?
Okay. Not much to show, especially because it's going to be the same as everyone else's, but I've got 5 kilowatts on the roof. Let me unplug and walk out there. I've got 5 kilowatts on my detached garage, and it's a Solar Edge inverter with DC optimizers, and net metered with consumers in category 1 net metering. All right, let's see, find a good angle here. There you go. How's that? Can you see it?
Yep.
So I have, if you can see, I have one panel. There's 17 panels. Only 16 of them are connected, and I left one on the. I left that one in the corner I just ran the DC down into my garage, and sometime when I stop procrastinating, that'll just be my tinkering panel to charge some batteries or just kind of play around with on the DC side. So that's what I got.
Any other final questions for Ken? Well, thank you very much. This has been great. We really appreciate it.
Good. Yeah, it's hard to follow up Dave Strensky. He's that's impressive stuff.
No, both Dave and you are doing very impressive work, and our next person, Mark Clevey, has also done some very impressive work. So we'll turn it over now to Mark. Thank you very much, Ken.
All right, I'm going to try and share the screen here. I'm going to find it. Can you hear me, John?
Yes.
So, trying to find it. Oh, here it is. Okay, look at this. Does it show up?
Yes, it has.
Excellent. So,
where's your picture taken? In the Bahamas?
Yes, that's the Bahamas. Yes.
Right.
Nice. Actually, that's Ann Arbor. Beautiful Ann Arbor. That's the Huron River there. Yeah. I'm going to talk briefly about a solar that I have in my home in Ann Arbor, and if I have time, I'll talk about the one in Harbor Springs. But a highlight, I guess, of this talk is what happened to us when we put up the solar system. So we're in Ann Arbor, and we installed this energy system here. Up above here are another 4 panels and stuff, so a total of 12 panels. This is a house that was built in 1955. We connected up with a group that did energy efficiency upgrade in our house, which we did, and we got a joint Pearl certification for a solar and energy efficient house in the state. First one that was done in Michigan, joint certification. Solar is a pretty straightforward system. It's 3.2 kilowatt hours. It's 12 panels, 260 watt poly panels that were made in Solar World, and a solar edge inverter and a single phase solar edge inverter. We didn't at the time put the inverter in where I could charge my car, because neither of our cars are fully electric, but we bought an inverter with an option, add-on option to do that, and we'll be doing that next year when we get another car. We expanded all of our warranties, so the whole system is basically good out through 2000 for 25 years. Homeland Solar here in Ann Arbor was the installer of the system, and we got the panels from McNaught & McKay in Michigan here. Cost, our energy efficiency upgrade cost $20,000. We did that through Michigan Saves and Eco-Intelligent Homes in Farmington Hills. We designed the system specifically to match the payback, and so far we're ahead of the game. We're actually saving more energy than our loan, and that will probably increase in the months to come. So that's good news. On the solar PV, we had it was cost us $9,200 in cash for that 2.06 watt installed. We got a tax credit for $2,700, and the ROI was 12 to 15 year payback until we got the bad news, which I'll talk about in a second. This is the output, tracks with the sun. We have a solar edge that tracks the system, and it stays pretty consistent. The year we put it in, it was only 6 months. Year we put it in, every year it produces pretty much. We are on track this year to be the highest performing year of so far, with to date 2.31 MWH, saved over $2,000, lots of emissions, and a bunch of trees planted. So we're doing well. We're doing what we had expected to do with this system. In Harbor Springs, we built a house there. We bought a house that was built in 1926. We upgraded that, and we went 100% solar through there. The city of Harbor Springs is a municipal utility, and they have a voluntary green pricing program where you can buy green energy there. By buying 100%, when you do that, they take off several other fees that they charge for electricity, which brings it down to basically a wash. My electric bill in last month in Harbor Springs was $28. And then we hit this. In November of 2009, Governor Whitmer signed the tax legislation that got rid of tax. What we found when we did our system in Ann Arbor was that our property taxes went up. We expected it. In fact, we put our system in so that we could engage in that fight. And the city raised our taxes, took my payback out almost to 32 years, essentially destroyed all incentives in Ann Arbor for putting in solar, other than the incentive to clap when the city said that they were going to go green. Of course, the solar was the tax was the exact opposite of what they were doing. It was also stark in the fact that Ann Arbor sits next to Ypsilanti and they don't tax solar. So Ann Arbor was one of the few communities in the whole state that was taxing solar. So we took that fight on, took the city, I sued the city, took them to the Michigan Tax Tribunal. In the process of doing that, it raised awareness of this issue. And it was one of the few bipartisan things that happened in the state over the last couple of years was almost unanimous for both Republicans and Democrats signing on to get rid of this nasty tax. In last December, leadership awards were jointly given to myself and Representative Robbie, who took this fight on. And we were able to eliminate the tax scourge, solar tax scourge in Michigan. And I think more importantly, the stark hypocrisy of our leaders to be talking about green things on one side of their mouth and then totally destroying all incentives to put in solar with the other side. So at least we got rid of that fight and got rid of solar taxation on that. The fight was worth it for that. So in essence, we're doing these things. Good news is on Tuesday, I'm going to be in Harbor Springs again. I'm making a presentation to the city council. They have agreed to do true net metering. So they pay you for solar exactly what you pay them for electricity. They are now forging an agreement with Petoskey, City of Harbor Springs, Traverse City, and Charlevoix. And the agreement will be for them to join together as 4 municipal utilities that are all contiguous so they can transfer power back and forth without a major tax by the utilities. And their goal is to go 100% solar in those 4 counties, and they're on their way to doing it. I'm going up as a representative of GLREA and a homeowner in Harbor Springs to talk about that and to offer our assistance in helping them. One of the things we're going to start doing is they're not afraid of distributed solar in those 4 utilities. And so they want as much as possible to put solar on houses, and we're putting together an incentive package to streamline the permitting process and help that. Part of that, I think, will be city efforts to aggregate purchasing so we can drop the cost of solar and bundle projects together. So that's my presentation. John?
How about any questions for Mark, either on his systems or on his work in Harbor Springs or on the taxation issue?
Must have done a good job, John.
Mark, question on your Ann Arbor home.
Yes, sir.
When you look at the dollars and cents, do you think the payback was bigger from your energy rehab or from putting in solar, or are they about the same?
You know, that's a good question. I don't have enough data yet on the energy rehab, but I look at the house. It was an older house built in the 50s. Had 3 inches of insulation in the walls, and it was leaky, and it needed. I can tell you that just based on comfort alone, it was worth the investment, and probably would have done it for that. But I do know that that the energy upgrade, the way that we did it, I paid cash for the solar. But I borrowed the money from Michigan State for the energy upgrade, and it has made no difference. The energy savings on my energy bill is paying for the energy efficiency. I can't separate that out from the solar, but before there were months where the utility would contact me. I had my bill froze twice by DTE because I wasn't buying enough energy, and they assumed that I was stealing it or something. So they actually froze my bill and sent an inspector out to see how it was possible that somebody could not be using their energy, only to find out that, you know, I had a solar system and it was hooked to their, I used the word smart meter in parentheses. Their smart meter didn't figure it out. So now every October, I have to call up DTE and tell them not to shut down my system because I have solar. And I've done this now for 5 years. Literally, I have to call them up and say, don't freeze my bill again. Remember, I'm the guy with solar in Ann Arbor. And they go, oh, you, yeah, okay. And it's because the computer automatically clicks over and freezes my account with DTE. And then 3 months later, they send me a bill and charge me for not payment. So it's really kind of interesting.
So Mark, your home is almost zero net energy?
Yes, almost.
Okay.
Yeah, and I'm still on the old system for payment with the utilities. So they have to pay me true net metering. But I'm sure they'll figure out a way to weasel out of that soon. So.
And you're zero net energy with only a 3 kilowatt system?
Because of the energy efficiency upgrade that I did now, and with that, and so on balance, you know, I need a little bit more data, but I was saving anywhere from 30 to 50% on my bill just on the solar alone.
Okay.
So the savings is in natural gas on the energy efficiency, of course.
Other questions for Mark?
Yeah, I have a question.
Go ahead.
So Mark, this is Vince Crusoe, Ann Arbor as well. Thanks for all your work on the solar and energy efficiency. That's great. I have a question about DTE billing and what a homeowner can do who overgenerates electricity in the DTE sphere, and what is the outlook for solar energy being net metered in Ann Arbor?
Well, technically, you don't over generate in the system because you can't design a system that is bigger for your own use. That's bigger than the amount of energy the home uses. Same thing on a commercial building. You can't over generate. So that doesn't happen. I've never gotten to a point where it was zero. I didn't use any DTE energy because I don't have a battery storage. So there's times even in the summer when, you know, it's late at night, the lights are on, and I'm buying DTE energy. It's offset by what I've sold them during the day. So I can't over generate unless I put in batteries. In terms of net metering, the city is very clear that it follows state law, even when it's not to their advantage to do so. So I don't sense that they're going to do anything to offset the loss in net metering for customers that are putting in solar now. They should. They could offset it on the water bill, and they could offset it on the property taxes, both of which I had suggested. I sit on for those of you watching, I've been on the Energy Commission for the City of Ann Arbor for 6 years now, and we fight this good fight, you know, every month in our meetings. We have said that the City of Ann Arbor should pick up the difference on the net metering when DTE lowered its reimbursement rate. Now they want to do it just at PERPA rates and take it down to 3 or 4 cents a kilowatt hour reimbursement, which will be, you know, devastating, I think. The city could offset that by allowing you to charge out the difference on your water bill. We've recommended they do that. The city is reluctant to do that. So in answer to your question, Vince, I think they're going to do nothing except probably increase the volume of saying how green they are.
Yeah, so the one situation we had in Ann Arbor, you mentioned that the city was taxing solar panels. I proposed to city council members that they give you a rebate like they do with stormwater. So if you have rain barrels, rain gardens, something my wife and I have pushed in the city and got adopted, you get a rebate on your water stormwater fee. They could have done that and chose not to. And so thank you for going up to Lansing and fighting it and getting the legislators on board to fight back on what was happening in Ann Arbor and encouraging solar panels now, which is great. Thanks for doing that.
So Vince, we're going to have a new city council soon. So I would encourage you to bring that back. We also no longer have DTE in charge of the Energy Commission. The previous people in the Energy Commission actually elected the representative from DTE Energy to take over and be chair of the Ann Arbor Energy Commission. That was a banner day. Anyway, we have a new Energy Commission after the elections, Vince, and I would strongly recommend you bring that back and reintroduce it and go to both the Environmental Commission and the Energy Commission and present it there, and then take it to the and ask for our endorsement, and then take it to City Council, because that is an excellent idea. And yes, they not only could but should be doing that.
Yeah, thanks so much.
Okay, well, thank you very much, Mark Levy. Great presentation, great questions. We have to move on to our next presenter, which will be Jared Towns, Rob Karchner, and David Bacon from Absolute Solar. Dave, are you? Dan?
Yes. Hey, John.
Hey, great. How are you? Take it
I'm
away.
great. Oh, John, hey, it's Rob here with Absolute Solar as well. Now, we'd sent over that video to John Sarver, and is it just good to go to play, or he had told us to send it to him?
We had to change our protocol. So can you quickly share your screen and put it on yourself? I didn't get the word from John that I was supposed to do it.
Oh, geez. Okay. Dan, do you have the ability to screen share?
Here, yeah, let me pull it up and I should be able to get that going.
Okay, great.
Just a second here.
I apologize. John had to, he had a death in the family. And so he had to, we had to shift who was going to be running this program.
Okay, yeah, John had mentioned that. That was sad he wasn't able to be here, especially under the circumstances. But yeah, that's all right. Yeah, we had just emailed him the video, and
there you go.
Oh, there we go.
Okay, we're not hearing any sound.
Yep, Dan, if you could start it over with sound, perhaps.
Okay, sorry about that, guys. Let's try this again.
Say thank you to them for putting on the. Hello, and thank you for joining me on the Michigan Virtual Solar Home Tour hosted by the Great Lakes Renewable Energy Association. Just want to say thank you to them for putting on this great event yet again and helping Michigan become more sustainable. My name is Jared Towns, and I'm the Director of Installations at Absolute Environmental Solutions. And I just want to take a few minutes to go over with you our installation process and what separates us, from our competitors in this ever-changing industry. First and foremost, we pride ourselves with every single installation that we do. We want to make sure that the product that we're delivering to our customers is one that we're not only proud of, but our customers are excited to have and happy with. So the first step in this is just simply doing a free site visit, meeting with that customer, going over what their needs are, what their wants are, so we can then check all the boxes and make sure we're installing a system that best fits their needs, not only efficiency-wise, but aesthetics as well. And from there, we'll take our site visit information and we can take it back to the office and use our software programs to then input this, and we use LiDAR so we can then factor in any shading from trees, Michigan's weather patterns, will account for. So in the end, we can give you a accurate return on investment, one that you can expect years down the road. As a part of this too, we do also offer battery backup systems and EV chargers as a part of our installations. And we're not exclusive with any one manufacturer. So, if our customers have a certain product that they really want, we can get our hands on that, put that in for them, so that they're happy with that finished product. And this allows us, to do anywhere from pitched roofs, flat roofs, office buildings, ground mounts. We can tackle those and then put in the right system to maximize the efficiency of it. When we do this installation, we do handle all permitting. So the building permit, the electrical permit, we will interface with the utility as well, just to make sure we deliver that turnkey solution, and our customers can just sit back and let this process happen. And our setup with these jobs as well, we do include either a power optimizer or a microinverter with each installation. And what that allows our systems to do is to allow each solar panel that we put in, it independently produces. So if there's one panel that may be getting shade from a tree, it's not going to take the rest of the system down in the efficiency. And then this also allows us to do remote monitoring. So our customers at the end of this will then be able to check each individual solar panel, the daily production, the weekly production, the monthly and annual production, of their panels and of their system. So, if there is a problem with it, we can also track it as a company too. And our service on the back end, that's where we pride ourselves. If there is, some sort of an issue or a question, we can address that right away. We know exactly what our customers are talking about. And make sure that not only they're a customer for the initial, but we want to be have customers down the road. And it's something our attention to detail in our service is what we pride ourselves in. And this allows us to develop and generate referrals. It's fun for us to be able to meet with clients and have that interaction and develop those relationships among friends. It also allows us to work on projects like we've got one coming up for Meridian Township and their fire station. Now, this is a very cool community project. They're leading the way, in this, and it's one that we're excited to be working on. So feel free to stop by and check us out. We'll be out there in a few weeks. And next up, I do have the co-founder, Rob Kierker, talking on his Box 47 Morning Blend. And if you have any questions following these, feel free to reach out to us. We'd love to chat and talk. Thank you.
Rob Kierker is the co-owner of Absolute Environmental Solutions in Lansing. Rob, welcome to Morning Blend. Tell us about your background and how AES got started.
Hi, good morning. Thank you for having me. AES Solar, we got started here in Lansing. I studied environmental science here at MSU in environmental law. And that's where I met my business partner here at the College of Law, running the Environmental Law Society. And we decided we wanted to actually try to, install clean energy here in our community. And really, this has been our passion. So, we kind of had a dream and went for it. And so it's very exciting to be able to be here in the local community, doing the stuff that we love, which is solar energy. We also do environmental testing and home inspections.
So in addition to all those other testings, I know that solar is your primary focus for business residential. If I'm a homeowner and I decided that, I'd really like to go solar, I want to maybe do my part to try to help protect the environment and clean the environment of us up as much as possible, and maybe save some money as well. So tell us how that process works.
How that works is we set you up with a free site visit where we come out and just discuss with you kind of what your goals are, if you have any particular interest in mind, and then we basically design a solar system that's tailored for your home, whether it's roof mount, ground mount, whatever it might be. Provide you with that free quote, and then if you decide to go forward with it, we take care of all the permitting, application process, to the utility, all of that handled for you. System installs only take a couple of days, and then you do start saving money as soon as that's on. There's still the federal tax credit that you can take advantage of. Net metering is still in place. And if you're a Board of Water Light customer, there's a rebate still available as well. So lots of good advantages. And then we essentially set up everything for you and then set you up with online monitoring so you can watch your system any given day. And usually these systems pay for themselves in as little as 7-8 years. And then they last 25 years material, 30-year power output warranty. So yeah, I mean, it's really still a great time for solar. We do use American-made products, which are great. And then they have a nice all-black aesthetic design too. So really love the look of our systems, and still really good time to move forward with solar. All those incentives are still in place.
That's great to hear. I wasn't sure about that. And then also adds to the value of your home as well.
Yes, and it adds to the value. That's a big part of it. Yep.
All right, so hey guys, this is Dan Bacon again, one of the co-founders and president of Absolute Solar. And what we're taking a look at now is an example of some of our projects this past year, different things here, ground mounts, roof mounts, commercial, residential, just to give you a sense of what we do. And Rob Carricker and Jared Towns are also here with us. So stick around after and we'll be able to answer any questions.
Are there any? Yes, thank you very much, Dan and Rob and Jared. Great presentation. Are there questions for these three gentlemen?
Question from David Arnosti. Has AES been involved in any PPA projects?
Rob, do you want to go ahead and answer?
Yes. Hello. So at this point, we haven't directly done PPAs, although we actually are working with one of our commercial clients who is very interested in pursuing PPAs, and that's something that is in the works. In several different locations, and a few commercial applications actually, in a few locations in the state. So that is something that we plan to be involved in more and more. I would expect over the years. I believe that's going to be a large part of the expansion of the solar industry. So I would expect that next season would most likely be involved in maybe even more than one PPA, because it is a great option, for a lot of different applications.
Thank you.
Other questions? Well, this is a comment. You've put together some amazing projects. They look really nice, and you obviously do quality work. And the fact that you're located in Lansing means that maybe we could get you to come over to some of these committee hearings where we have to educate legislators about solar and the need for them to be supportive of it. So.
Yeah, I actually was attending a few of those before the shutdown. So I was at those Senate hearings where they were discussing the net metering bill and removing the cap. So I was definitely there in full support, and we would love to be involved in any way we can help, with the industry. It's very important. People get the word out there about how this really works. And, yes.
Exactly.
Thank you, John.
You're welcome. Any other questions? Final questions? Okay.
Hi, this is Bob Sink in Grand Rapids. I see you do some flat roof installations. I was wondering about the mounting of those. Is there a standard like mount, or are there a lot of different choices to mount on a flat roof?
Yeah, thanks for the question, Bob. Typically, what we would use is a ballast mount system. Depending on the roof, you could do either a ballast mount, you could do a tilted system. And Jared, feel free to jump in if you want to add anything about kind of how the ballast works and our approach to that.
Yeah, I think the ballasts are a great option for a lot of roof faces. You saw there was one that we did where we actually were able to anchor right to that roof itself. So a lot of times it depends on what the roof decking material is, what the customer's expectations are. So there are a few different options out there, just depending on that building that we're working on. We tend to lean one way or the other depending on what's actually there and the best way to install it. Also to maximize the production of the system itself. So just depending on usable space we have, if we get a big roof, a lot of times the ballast is a good option. If there's limited space, sometimes those tilts we can do that as well.
Okay. Well, thank you very much, Jared and Dan and Rob. We really appreciate your support. And I also want to share that Absolute Solar is also a sponsor for today's solar home tour. So we're very much appreciative of their financial support of this event, as well as to GLREA. So thank you again. Our next presenter will be John Kinch of Michigan Energy Options.
Hello, John. Can you hear me? Give me a thumbs up if you can.
I hear
you. All right. Good morning, everyone. So I'm going to talk a little bit about the solar that is at our headquarters. We're a clean energy nonprofit. But then I'm going to pivot and talk about community solar, which is a kind of solar that we've been involved with for a number of years now, helping to bring online several projects around the state, including one in East Lansing that we own and operate ourselves. Many of you may know Urban Options and Michigan Energy Options. We're the same organization. We changed the name a few years ago. This is a venerable house headquarters of Urban Options, which is in East Lansing. And as you can see from this photo, we have an integrated solar roof that was put in the late 1990s, and then in 2012.
John, are you sharing the picture?
Oh, is it not working? Let me try it again then. Thank you, John.
You're welcome.
Let me do this. I clicked on share, but it must not have clicked over. Here we go. Let's try it now.
There you go.
Beautiful. All right. And I'll give you full screen so you can see the whole thing, right? So this is our 1920s Dutch colonial that was fixed up in the 80s and 90s. It was a first energy demonstration center in the state of Michigan, thanks to John Sarver. And we've been there ever since. And one of the things we've been doing is constantly, kind of like Clevie, constantly tinkering with our home. And 2012, with the addition of these solar panels here, we earned LEED Platinum for the building. So that's as good as it gets. We have rain gardens, food we're growing. We have a white roof. We're kind of demonstrating a white roof there. Got a bat house, as you can see, and as well as the on-site solar. And of course, given what we've been doing as a nonprofit for most of our life, we've been very energy efficient. But I'll tell you this, is that when I took over this job about 10 years ago, we were the only game in town. And we had 3.2 kilowatts of solar. And we were constantly being asked about how we did it and why we did it. And we spent a lot of time, which we're happy to do, to educating people about solar. But we were an island unto ourselves. There was very little solar happening, even as late as 2012 in the area. And so one of the things that John Sarver and I got cooking on was this idea of a community solar park, which we'd heard about coming out of places like Colorado and Minnesota. And so we went ahead and began working with Lansing Board of Water and Light to develop that project. This is just in Google Earth of the house, and you can see the solar from there. And so what we ended up doing, working with the City of East Lansing and the Board of Water and Light, is determining the best location for community solar. And that's really one of the foundations of community solar. Many of us as businesses or homeowners may like to have solar on our roof, but we might not be able to do it. And that's because we might rent, we might not have a good roof, we might have shade, we might have other kinds of issues like that. We might not even have the upfront capital for it. You know, I'm a big believer in rooftop solar. In fact, those solar panels that I showed you there on the side of the house was the first solar job for a young fellow who's now doing great work around the state of Michigan with his solar company. He's been able to grow it and has enjoyed a lot of success. So community solar is, you know, that kind of fill-in for those of us who maybe can't locate it at our own buildings. So we determined that a place called Bircham Park in East Lansing would be a good place to locate that solar, working with the City of East Lansing. It's about 1.5 miles from our own headquarters. Bircham Park is in the park and recreation system of the city, but it's a bit of a misnomer. All right, let me just say right now, it's a dump. It's a capped landfill. And so for years, there's been lightly kind of used, a little bit of a trail around it, but for the most part, It's got waste from the 50s and 60s that was covered up sometime in the 70s and 80s. And our feeling, and especially in urban areas, is that locating solar on some of our brownfields and our capped landfills and our legacy industrial sites is a really great repurpose of what is a liability and turning it into an asset. And so we worked really hard with the city to make sure that we were going to be okay in terms of environmental compliance, worked with the Board of Water and Light, and then of course began rolling out the project where we were engaging Board of Water and Light customers to participate and essentially lease into the project. It's 345 kilowatts, so if you think back to our 3.2 kilowatts at our own building, it's 100 times more than we'd been doing before. It took us several years to put this all together. We had a number of challenges that I'll admit to. But ultimately, we were able to subscribe 150 businesses and residents of Board of Water and Light into the project. There's 1,000 panels out there. So essentially, we kind of said, okay, a share equals a panel. It's not quite exactly how it is, but it's an easy concept for people to get. One of the important features of this solar park is that because we're on a capped landfill, we're not using ground mounts, we're not using pounded posts, we are instead balancing the racking on concrete ballast, so it can just sit on top of the ground, and that way it doesn't do any damage to the cap. This was when it was installed late in 2018. We were hustling. I tell you what, on that Friday before the end of the year, we had Board of Water and Light come out and they turned the transformer on so that we were live, so we could claim that 30% tax credit, because we created an LLC. So I have a company called Community Energy Options, which is a for-profit company, which is me and a tax equity investor. So the tax equity investor was able to realize that investment, and that obviously made the capital stack work out. Michigan has some community solar parks or gardens or farms, and I mean some. There's probably a dozen the last time I looked at it. Other Midwest states like Illinois and Minnesota have hundreds of them. And the reason is that they have a policy carve out. They have a legislative statute that very particular targets community solar, because as I was saying, community solar is not rooftop, and as sure as heck is not utility scale solar. And we have draft legislation sitting out there in which community solar is a carve out. And I would just suggest some of you folks, if this interests you, to follow up with me, and I can get that bill into your hands. And Robbie and others, as Mark Levy has mentioned, have been involved with this. And I really think, I hope that next year when we have a regime change, that we'll be able, at the federal level, that we'll be able to pass some kind of legislation like this for a community solar carve out. One of the other important things we wanted to do, I come from an environmental background and I worked for a long time at the Nature Conservancy, is that we wanted to actually improve the site. So currently the site used to have just some sort of, kind of weedy grasses and things like that. So what we've done very consciously is added pollinator species to our site. So we're growing milkweed, as you can see, coneflowers, other species of plants that are good for habitat, are good for birds, are good for bees, are good for wildlife. So with time, this site will actually have more kind of environmental biodiversity benefits than it currently has now. And also, the nice thing about growing wildflowers within solar panels is that with time, they become maintenance free. You don't have to go out there and mow them. And it sure as heck is a better deal than putting down gravel, which is not a good idea. We also are monitoring our system daily. In fact, 2 days ago, I got a warning on my phone that something was wrong with one of our inverters at the site. And of course, we scrambled and are trying to figure out why the inverter went down. And then we found out from our inverter company that they had pushed the night before an update to the firmware and essentially took our inverter offline. But what's nice about our monitoring is that we can know in real time if we've got any issues out there. We can also know how we're performing. So you can see on that left-hand quadrant that we're actually performing better than we thought we would in September. If you can see, the red means we're doing more than we actually expected in the green. It also can forecast for us, so we know when weather's coming and when we can expect not to be producing energy. One of the other graphs is kind of interesting. If you look to the right-hand bottom corner, that's all of our 1,000 panels. And what that's showing us is in the morning when it's dark, it's red, it's not working so well, it's heating up and then it goes back down again. at the end of the day. But you can actually look at that and see how individual panels are kind of performing. And if you've got any particular issues with the row because there's something going on with your string or whatever else could possibly go wrong. And let me say this, that things go wrong all the time out there. Solar is get it and forget it, to be sure, compared to other technologies. But we have to be pretty vigilant to make sure that the system is functioning like it needs to be. And here's why. Participants get an on-bill credit from the Board of Water and Light. They're on-bill credits based upon how many green electrons are being produced out there at this site. If we're not having that site perform as it can perform, those investors then are getting less of a dividend back every month, and that's on us. So it really behooves us to be on top of this to make sure the operation and maintenance is right on so that people can say that they're having a good experience with our project. And I'd be happy as well to send out to anybody who's interested in our East Lansing Community Solar Update. We've got a bunch of more information about the project. We're working hard to try to bring other community solar projects on around the state. There's many challenges. Probably the biggest challenge, as Mark Clevey indicated, is the incumbent utility. If that utility doesn't want you to be doing a community solar project and your return mechanism for your member or participant is an on-bill credit, you got a problem. But we've got some NREL funding, National Renewable Energy Lab funding, and we're working very hard on some workarounds so that you can have community solar, whether your incumbent utility wants to see it or not. And I'd be happy to talk to folks about that as well. So with that, I'll pause and ask anybody if you have questions. Thank you, John.
Great presentation. Questions for John Kinch?
John, this is Mark Clevey. I have a question.
Yes, sir.
Does the inverter company that sent the software through and caused the disruption, is in your contract, do they have to cover any losses associated with that? I mean,
well, one of the things we learned in putting this project together, and we put it all together, the financing, procurement, terms and conditions, contracts. I signed so many legal documents with an electronic signature, Mark, that I couldn't even keep track of them all. So yeah, we are oftentimes, to be honest, having conversations between us and the solar panel manufacturer, although less so, the inverter company, the electricians that put the thing together. Our preventative maintenance discovered some issues, and we do that every year. And things have to be repaired and fixed. So yeah, there is a kind of, we have a real strong, positive working relationship with everybody. But I will say that as the O&M company, we're on the hook to make sure this thing works right. And contracts and guarantees and warranties can be challenging to kind of make sure that they're working in your favor.
So I have another question, if you don't mind. So the solar park is done with Lansing Board of Water and Light, correct?
Yes.
So 100% of the power generated from the park is sold to them.
Yep.
That's correct. Is that a model that could be shared with the other 40 plus municipal utilities in Michigan? And have you done that? Or is this something GLREA could team with you on to come up with, here's a model for doing it? Because they're the target, I would think.
Yeah, so we've already, the first one we actually helped to bring on was the Marquette Board of Light and Power. We have an office in Marquette, and we've been above the bridge since 2005. So that was the first one we helped put together with them. Then we moved over to Lance and helped with the project there as well. And that's another municipality. So we absolutely are having conversations. I've had conversations with Petoskey. You mentioned Petoskey Harbor Springs and all that. They've got a nice landfill dump sitting right there that's been capped. Could be another good location. I know they're also looking at the sewage.
Yes.
And I'm tied in with groundwork and all that. I'm Mark, so you and I should talk. So we've absolutely been talking to the municipalities. We've absolutely been at conferences and getting in front of them. Also the cooperatives. We work with them on the energy efficiency side. They've got what I would call kind of a baseload solar gardens going right now across the street from Wolverine Power. And so kind of like this Consumers Energy project, people can kind of buy into that remotely, even though it might not be necessarily located in their community, and they can be claiming they're getting community solar electrons.
Well, I have this pipe dream. Maybe we could all join together to make it happen before I go 6 feet under, that the municipal utilities all generate excess energy, and a law is passed that forces DTE and consumers' energy to take that offload power from the municipals at a price, that they should be, which is 28 cents a kilowatt hour, which accounts for the environmental problems that are associated with that. Municipals, in my way of thinking, is where the real action is.
Absolutely.
I'd encourage all of us to join together, Groundworks, you, us, and really run with this ball, because we're going to spend a lot of time fooling around with DTE and consumers. We have learned the hard way over the last couple of years in rate cases with them. We're, as somebody described it to me, we're bringing sage bundles to gunfights when we show up to fight the utilities, and that's not their weak spot. Their weak spot is municipals, and we should.
My bad pun is that's tilting at windmills. That's my bad pun.
Yeah.
One quick final question, John.
Yeah, John.
Before we move on,
Yes, sir.
do people actually own the panels, or are they subscribing to the panels?
Yeah, so good question. So when we were doing this now some years ago, we had a lot of concern that if folks actually owned those panels, they might be subject to SEC guidelines where that would be considered a commodity and they could be taxed and all kinds of hell could break loose. So we purposely structured this so that they are essentially leasing a right to that power commensurate to how much of the particular projects they have. So they might have 10 panels out of 1,000 panels. They get that percentage every month as an on-bill credit. I've since heard different things that you don't need to worry about the SEC buying into a project such as this. Others have suggested that you can, as an individual, claim the ITC through a community solar project. I know Dave Friedrichs has kind of suggested that might be a way forward as well. This is what we did. I don't think it's perfect, but we haven't had anybody come knock on the door and want any tax money out of us or anything like that. So I think that's probably a relatively good model.
Sounds great.
And I'd be happy to, by the way, as well, share as much as I can about some of this stuff, because it took us, as you know, it took us a long time to work our way through all the intricacies of making this happen.
No, we really appreciate all the hard work you and your staff have done. You clearly have been on the cutting edge, and we're learning from you, and you're a tremendous resource, and everybody can see your email and your phone numbers on the shared screen. So absolutely feel free to contact John. We at GLREA always enjoy working with John. He does great work. So thank you so much.
Thank you.
Okay, now we're going to go to our next presenter, which will be Dave Ferguson.
Yeah, and I'm not nearly as broad and sophisticated as the rest of these guys are. I am a humble homeowner who just put in a solar system, and we're going to talk about that. I'm going to mention SunPower and Oak Electric here, and I have no affiliation with either one of them other than they put in our system. So I don't want to make sure that I'm not representing them at all. We're at 4569 Barton Road in Williamston, and we have a house that we built. We didn't build it. It was built in 1968. We moved here in 1997. It has, 4 bedrooms, 2.5 baths, and we're on 10 acres out here. We put in an American metal roof in 2006, and we have a geothermal heating and cooling system that we put in about 5 years ago. Propane stove and hot water, and we have an electric clothes dryer. So that's what we have, and that's what led us to this. I'm going in the right direction here. Oh, I'm sorry. Let me do it this way. Our electric usage from July 2018 through April 2020, we used about 420 kilowatts a month in the house, and the geothermal system is on a separate meter. And I'm not sure that I can explain fully why that is or how that is, but DTE gives a different break on rates for geothermal, so it got put into a separate meter that way. And the geothermal system reduced our propane use by about 600 gallons per year. And if people, briefly on the geothermal, is that the geothermal is basically has an electric backup that will kick in if you're raising the temperature by more than 3 degrees. So you keep your house at the same constant temperature, and mostly it runs off geothermal and doesn't use electricity other than run the compressors. and why we chose solar, and I guess this is a more of a personal thing than anything else, and it may or may not apply to everybody else, is that we look at our IRA investment fluctuations and decided that we would rather invest in solar energy than watch our investments go up and down. I don't know if that's a legitimate reason, but it was good for us. We also we're looking at a power backup, and out here where we live, when the power goes out, you can hear all these generators firing up around us, and we've never had a generator. But when the power goes out, we don't have any water, and that was it makes it a little difficult. It takes a long time for your house to cool down in the wintertime, but when you don't have any water and you're trying to flush toilets, it's kind of inconvenient at least. And then we saw a Sierra Club promotion, and that was probably what got us to move on this at one point. And the Sierra Club was partnered with a company called Sun Power out of California, and we got the tax credit of 26%. We got the $1,000 rebate through their cooperation with the Sierra Club. And then I'm not sure how common this is or that, but in the installation by Oak Electric, it was financed at 2.99% for 12 years. So this is the Oak Electric base price was $45,500. We got some sort of credit for signing in 2 weeks. The Tesla Powerwall was $12,900, which is a sizable investment. But if you people are looking at the installed generator backups, it's a moderately more expensive than that. So that's our gross cost and the federal tax credit. And so after we're basically financing $42,000 over 12 years. The $42,000, the monthly payments assumes that we're going to give the energy credit to pay down the loan. Again, this is the SunPower specifications, which maybe from a technical standpoint means something to somebody, but we chose to put the solar system outside on a freestanding or system because we have a metal roof, and we didn't want to mess with the metal roof because the metal roof has a lifetime guarantee, and we didn't know what drilling into that. In some respects they said that it's not a big deal, go ahead and do it, and it's not a big deal, but we were just nervous. So we have land out here. It's not really obtrusive, so we have things setting out in the field next to our house. Again, this is a financial solution or financial analysis that SunPower, that Oak Electric gave us. It's only been operating for a couple months. I can't really tell you whether this is going to hold true or not, but I can say that the solar payment, the $360, that is correct because that's the financing amount. And the new utility bill, our last utility bill, was $10 after they got everything all fixed up and set up. And this is what they say their yearly breakdown is. And so by 2058, when I'm 108 years old, things will be looking pretty good. So these are some of the issues that we faced when we were doing it. And I already said that because we have a metal roof, we chose the ground system. The geothermal system is a separate meter, and it made the DT approval process pretty burdensome. Oak Electric, waded through a lot of that. I'm still not quite sure they got it correct, but it seems to be correct because there was at one point they were talking about changing the metering on the geothermal to run directly through the main meter instead of on the separate meter. And it seems that DTE has it set up so that they can do something within their billing system to account for the fact that we have two different meters. Because the geothermal system, the solar is not wired into the geothermal meter. The geothermal meter, they left that alone. We have a barn that's on a commercial account. I don't know, somebody mentioned they had a barn or a garage out there. And we left that alone. We don't usually use electricity in the barn, and so we're still paying for that. Thought process on that, and the discussion is that the cost to set up and arrange it was more than the benefits. And one of the things is that DTE took 3 months after installation to get us to net metering. Battery backup is not powerful enough to run the geothermal system, but the conversion to battery power, once it goes on the battery, it just clicks right off. This is what we were generating in the last couple months once we got to net metering. And that's the company that we used, Oak Electric in Waterford, Michigan. And again, they're not paying me, I'm not paying them. I just put it up there for information. Now so I guess I'm ready now for questions if anybody has. Oh, I got some pictures, I guess. That's what our system looks like. And this is the Powerwall specifications. I don't know if people can read that or not.
So questions for Dave.
This is Mark Levy. I have a question. David, it wasn't clear to me, is there a battery system associated with your solar system or not?
That's what this is here, this Tesla.
So,
and if you look at Tesla, they show all the pictures of it outside. It's actually mounted on the wall in the basement.
How much? And I'll bet your geothermal system is not linked to the battery system. That's
correct, and it has something to do with the amount of power that the geothermal system.
No, I don't think so. I think that the battery system. I mean, you'd have to look at the total power, but there ought to be enough power in that Tesla backup system to run the geothermal pump. That's all it is a pump. So my sense is that because you got 2 meters, this is a switch issue. If you just go downstairs and flip the switch, you might be able to at least move this over so you can do that. But you need to talk to an electrician. But it makes no sense that this wouldn't run the pump on the geothermal system.
It'll run the pump. They said it's strong enough to run the pump on the pump for the house, the water pump. Yeah. But they told us that it didn't have enough, and I'm not sure, I just don't know. It's electrician.
Yes, an electrician. You know, add some more batteries.
That would do it. That's what they told us.
Right. Good job.
Hey, Mark, this is John Donor. I got a geothermal pump as well, and the startup draw on the compressor exceeds the maximum amperage supplied, even for a short time, by the Tesla Powerwall. That's why I can't start up the compressor.
Ah, okay, that makes sense. Boy, that's a technical problem for Tesla to solve. Jeez, that's crazy.
Hey, this is Ken. I had to go for a second and come back, but I had a similar issue where Alan Waller, our friend Alan Waller, helped us put a soft start on the geothermal pump that brought the startup current to within what the Powerwall could handle.
Another point about the Powerwall capacity and the size of your solar to run your geothermal. During the day, you probably have, on a sunny day at least, in the wintertime, you would have plenty of energy from the solar to directly run your geothermal through the Powerwall inverters, I guess.
Well, so far, just as a comment, in the summertime so far, with the Powerwall, it saves 17% in case of a backup. But what happens is that the Powerwall charges during the day, and then it rarely discharges at night. I mean, rarely discharges fully, I should say it that way.
Another question about the Powerwall. Are you on the time of day rate with your system? Because you may be able to avoid consuming power on peak weekdays, 11 a.m. to 7 p.m. And then run off the power wall and the solar during that time. And then overnight, if you happen to have a cloudy day, you can fill the power wall back up from the off-peak power. You may do better that way on your
We're on time of day for the geothermal, but the rest of the house is not.
Because the solar, so you're, this is installed this year recently then? So you're on the distributed generation?
We just came up this year. I don't know the distributed. I don't know what that means.
Yeah, he is. He's in DTE's territory, and the DG tariff kicked in about a year ago.
Yep.
That's what I thought, because we were a little disadvantaged by this.
Right.
So it may work out better economically to use the time of day rate with your system, especially having the battery, because your solar that you're producing, you can get a little bit larger credit for that outflow during weekday peak times, which is when the solar happens. So 5/7 of your solar production is during peak times. Weekends, not so much, right? But,
Correct.
So I think in the future, a lot more people are probably going to be incorporating battery systems into their solar. And I think that we may want to invite Dave back to do a solar story, which is an hour-long session on a particular system where we could peel the onion a little bit more, because it sounds like there's a lot of interest in battery systems.
Yeah, well, you probably want to get somebody who knows what they're talking about as opposed to me, though.
Well, we can get a couple of people, but I still think it'd be very helpful. So I wish we could stay on this, but we have to move on. So thank you so much, Dave, for a great presentation. And we're now going to turn to Mr. Bob Sink to talk about his system. Thank you,
Hi,
Dave.
everybody. Well, thanks for tuning in. Let's see if I can share my, I want to share my presentation. I made a PowerPoint. Can you see my PowerPoint? Okay, well, on my screen, there's a picture of me standing in front of my house. And I can't see myself because there's everyone else who's in the meeting is pulling it up. Anyway, on the roof there is solar panels for heating water. And water heating doesn't get much press anymore. It's an older technology, and with the excitement of PV panels generating electricity at very low cost, that's where the excitement is. But I thought I would talk about my solar water heating just because it doesn't get talked about much anymore. Now, we installed that in 2013, 7 years ago. These are flat plate panels, and there's also, let's see, I just hit enter and that should have gone to the next. I'm not getting any response here. Oh, there it is. Now it might. So there's also tube style connectors. And is one better than the other? I don't know. Maybe there are different attributes depending on your situation. By the look of the frame that's holding this thing up, those tubes might be pretty light. Looks like which would be a nice thing. These tubes are mounted more vertical than mine. I had mine changed. The support at the top I had lengthened so it would make it more vertical. And so I just did that this summer. Hopefully that will give me more heat in the winter. There's never enough heat in the winter, and there's way too much in the summer. So if that balances out a little more, that would be an improvement. So let's go to the basement. And here's my big tank. It's like a regular hot water tank. The city water comes in here, and the water from the roof, which has antifreeze in it, is in a loop that does not mix with the water that I use. this white tank, little white tank on the side, has to do with keeping the water, the pressure in the loop correct. And then there's copper coils inside the tank for a heat exchanger to heat up the water that I use. And this gray thing on the left is the water pump, which just goes on and off, works on its own when it senses the roof is hotter than the tank. It turns on. When the tank catches up, it turns off. And then here's a close-up. I can look and see some data. Here we see that the tank has a temperature of 132 degrees. It will automatically turn off at 140 degrees. So that's a customizable setting. If I had small children in the home, I would have that turn off at a lower temperature for safety. But it's just my wife and I, so we can have a higher temperature there. And then I can press a button and I can see what the temperature is on the roof. And I can also go into vacation mode. So if I go away in the summer and don't use any water, the pump won't run and the antifreeze could overheat. So vacation mode will run the pump at night and cool down the water so that the antifreeze won't overheat. Now, in the winter, there won't be enough solar heat. So I have another conventional water heater. So sometimes the solar water heating is called preheating because you're going to want to have a conventional water heater. Now you can have whatever kind of water heater you want, a gas or electric, a tank or on demand. I used to have a gas tank, but it sprung a leak and had to be replaced. So I went with this electric on demand. Since there's only 2 of us in the home, I read that on demand is better for low usage tanks, better for big families with lots of hot water usage. And I can set the temperature. 113 degrees is my favorite temperature for my shower. And it's great to just turn the hot water knob and not even have to turn the cold water knob. So let's talk about electric now. I put in these panels on my garage. My garage happened to have a standing seam metal roof. And if you're putting solar on a standing seam, they just clamp right on to the seams that stick up. And so you don't have any holes going into the roof. Inside the garage, we have the inverter, which converts from the direct to the alternating current and syncs up the alternating current with what's on the grid. So if I am not using all the electricity that this is producing, it'll go out on the grid. My neighbors will use it. Consumers Energy will charge them full price and I'll get a credit. Now on the other side of the wall, on the outside of my garage, we have an emergency shutoff. So if the lines are down and the linemen need to work, they can pull this lever that will cut off my system so they will not get poked by any of my electricity. This spring I came out here and there was a bird nest on it and I thought, well, Consumers Energy is not going to like that. So I, with a heavy heart, evicted the birds. So what does it cost? This system, this is the PV, cost $9,000. 30% tax credit brought it down to $6,300. And so now I'm saving money every month When will I get paid back? I did some calculation based on the first year of usage, and it should pay for itself in 15 years. Since then, I switched to the time of day pricing, which gives me a slightly better deal. And I find that 2020 has produced more electricity than 2019. So my payback will likely be less than 15 years. Now, if my panels were facing south instead of west, they would be producing a lot more electricity, and my payback would likely be less than 10 years. So now the house. We just had it reshingled this year. So now I'm able to put on solar. So certainly you want to check your roof before you put solar up. Make sure it's all in good shape, because those solar panels may last 30 years and you don't want to pull them down to do work on the roof. First step here is to put in the posts, and those do screw into the wood under the shingles, and they have flashing attached to keep the rain out. And then rails are mounted to those posts, and then the panels are mounted to the rails. Now, if you're a do-it-yourselfer and you are familiar with electric projects and you're not afraid to go up on your roof, you can do solar yourself, but you do want to consider safety. Now, these guys are students from Muskegon Community College. My installer, Chuck Almond, is also an instructor in renewable technology at the community college. So he took this opportunity to give his students some on-hands experience. So I have 7 panels facing west now and 7 facing east. That's going to more than double my production. Well, the electrical work is not finished yet. They're not hooked up yet. So soon that will be more than doubling my production. So what am I going to do with all that electricity? Well, I've got 2 electric cars, and before COVID, I was using as much electricity driving as the rest of my house. And I love driving when I know that I'm not polluting when I drive, I'm not harming anyone with asthma, I'm not making breathing problems worse, and I'm not contributing to climate change. So it might not be as much fun to drive a lawnmower as a car, but it is much nicer, I think, doing it with electricity. I don't have any fumes, I don't have the loud noise. And this mower is old and it works great. And I can just imagine that the new lawnmowers have got to be much better. I did some reading on them, and you can even get ones that the battery comes out and you can put the battery in a chainsaw, in a trimmer. You can have a whole family of tools, power tools that you use with the same battery. So, and even you can run a lawnmower for an hour on one battery. So whatever your size of lawn is, you can probably find an electric mower that will meet your needs. So my last slide is about the federal tax credit. It's now 26%, next year 24%. Of course, individuals can get it. I mean, next year 22%. But churches and other nonprofits can also get that credit. It's a little more complicated. You need to create an LLC, and they will put up the money, and then they will get that tax credit right away, and then every quarter or however you decide to pay them, they'll get paid based on how much electricity is produced. And the nonprofit, they don't have to pay anything up front, and they save money with the first bill. because you're going to be charging them less than the utility is charging them. And here's my email address. I can get anyone interested connected with a group of churches that have already done this in Michigan, if you want the details on that. So John, that's it for my presentation.
Well, thank you very much, Bob. That was a great presentation. Two quick comments is that, you know, you can calculate your payback period when you first install the solar system. But one thing people tend to forget is that utility rates keep going up every year. And currently this year, Consumers is asking for a 14% increase in the residential rates. So as people's energy through solar remains flat, utility electricity can increase over time, which will make your payback period even shorter than when you initially calculate it. And my other quick question, Bob, is what is the name of Chuck Allman's solar firm?
Good question.
Civic Solar?
No, it's something like Almond Design.
Okay.
Or Alm Design.
Okay.
It
sounds great. Okay, we got to cut it off here because our next presentation. So thank you so much, Bob, for a great presentation. And your teeing up churches is perfect because our next guest, David Arnosti, will be talking about installing a solar system on the Hazlitt Community Church. Take it away, David. And thank you, Bob.
John, thank you so much for hosting this fascinating series this morning. And I'm very pleased to give a perspective on the implementation of solar in the context of houses of worship. And what I'd like to do in my one Andy Warhol unit 15 minutes of fame here is to provide just a few details of our system and then some insight on how we got there, our own congregation's experience, and then what that has led to, because it has branched out into much more than just putting a solar roof on the church. So the short story is we have at Hazlitt Community Church a 20 kilowatt photovoltaic system. Annual production is around 22,000 kilowatt hours. That's about 2/3 of our use. Installer was Peninsula Solar based in Marquette. And the panels themselves, we have 68 Solar World panels hooked up to Solar Edge inverters. We have 2 strings. Okay, I seem to be on a timer here. Just a moment. I didn't want to put the timer on. Just a second. It's a good way to keep yourself on track though. Just a second. Go back to the sharing. Okay, here we go. So wait a minute. Sorry. I must have hit the timer button at some point. Let me exit the slideshow. Okay. There we go. Okay, so let's see. All right, so I just wanted to introduce our church. Can people see that slide? I have our dream team pastors, Betsy Aho and Aaron Heisler, who are our ministers at the church. Locally in the community, Hazlitt Community Church is known for its food pantry. This is the only operation that currently has people going in and out. We maintain service to the community, and the food pantry has numerous freezers and fridges. That's about 15% of our electricity bill. So how did we get to the project? We had interactions with a statewide organization, Michigan Interfaith Power and Light. This helped us put together a green team that really spearheaded the project and then connected us to neighboring Edgewood Church in East Lansing, which was also on the solar track. Here are the principals for Michigan Interfaith Power and Light, Executive Director Leah Wist and John Schleicher, President of the board. Jim Detchen over at Edgewood Church was our key contact for their solar efforts and figuring out how that works. So the green team, as it now is constituted, did push through this solar roof, but we've also been involved in promoting native plantings for, as we've heard a little bit from the East Lansing Community Solar, and collaborating with neighbor congregations. So our site here is, there's the sanctuary here has a nice south-facing roof, which we realized could be appropriate for solar, also some flat roof area. We're directly south of Lake Lansing, just off of Hazlitt Road. So siting was opportune. It turns out that the roof had recently been redone, which was very good. And over the course of approximately 2 years, we, without knowing where we were going, we had a number of seminars and potlucks and discussions on climate change issues, renewable energy, and eventually sort of coalesced around our green team, interacted with the Meridian Solar Energy people and John Sarver, and finally by the end of 2016 had decided that we did want to go for a solar project, and how we would do it would be to put it on the church. We decided that in this case, we would dedicate it to a recently deceased member of our green team, Joyce Bartels, who is well known and well loved in the community and very active in environmental issues. And that had a couple of key effects for our project. One, it really gave it a lot more buy-in for people who just didn't know much about solar energy, but they knew a lot about Joyce Bartels. And two, it also had an impact in having community buy-in. We had in putting together the financials for this. So it was almost $59,000 at the time, just under $3 a watt. We had some big donors, but also a number of donations from community members who weren't directly connected with the church, but thought it was a good idea. So this, associating it with a famous person, I think was a big step that we really hadn't thought. So we dedicated it on Earth Day. We had a big huzzah. Our then minister, Kurt Kirchhoff, gave remarks to the choir saying. We had local TV there, got some publicity. Our Green Team Chair, Rich Baumgartner, interviewed, and that showed up on the evening news. And at that time, Edgewood and Hazlitt were the only two churches who had put on solar roofs in the area that we knew of. So the operation of the church photovoltaic Joyce Bartels Memorial Solar has been pretty seamless over the last 3 years. It's performed as expected. We had some dripping in one corner of the roof. The installer came out and did some caulking. Otherwise, no issues. We have solar edge monitoring so we can appreciate what is being produced. The production in September, for instance, here up to 100 kilowatt hours. Some days we had heavy rain, you can see those. Overall, for the last 3 years, though, month to month, you can see our peak production is March to October. Of course, that coincides with peak electricity use in Michigan as people crank up their air conditioners. So we're providing some peak load capacity for consumers' energy, although sometimes they don't describe it that way. We can also see the environmental benefits. The direct benefit to the church, since this was a donated system, people took their own tax write-offs, is avoiding about $3,000 in utility costs every year, which of course can be used for things like supporting the food pantry and other efforts. This led us also to connect with Islamic Center in East Lansing and University Lutheran through the Solarize Meridian initiative. They put on a going solar presentation in 2018. We also presented and discussed what we had been doing. And through further interactions and discussions, we decided to team up working with Consumers House of Worship Rewards program and the Michigan Interfaith Power and Light Carbon Fund. We did a joint effort and raised funds for homeless family shelter, Haven House, to do energy rehab. And so we got some good publicity for Haven House for the work they do. And again, it was through our solar efforts that we really linked up to like-minded community houses of worship. Since then, we've collaborated with area houses of worship in presenting things like Paris to Pittsburgh, climate change film, which we showed back in the days when you could go to the movie theater. That was last October. We hosted a virtual solar summit in March where we got together many other houses of worship who were interested in similar kind of initiatives. And just in the last year then, a number of other houses of worship who we've worked with, including John Schleicher's Grace Lutheran. This is Absolute Solar project that just went active this summer. I think that Absolute also had a hand in University Lutheran and Islamic Center's own solar projects that just went on this summer. So now I think it's becoming, if not expected, it's not at all surprised that the thought leaders on confronting climate change and a renewable future are houses of worship, and people will probably say, oh yes, of course, and now what are we going to do next? So I think that part of the activities that of course are directly impacting, can we make renewable energy and reduce our carbon footprint, but also how can we work together? Michigan Interfaith Power and Light has played a key role in connecting us. Just to note, since no good project goes unpunished, since doing this project, I got recruited to serve on the board for Michigan Interfaith Power and Light. And those of you who may have some ideas about how we can work together, please contact us, Leah Wist at Michigan Interfaith Power and Light, or you can email me. I've put my email contact information at the bottom. And I'd be very happy to take any questions.
Great presentation, David. Thank you so much. Questions for David? Well, let me ask a question. So the church did not develop an LLC. They just owned the system themselves and raised the money, and the individuals were able to take the tax credit for their donations?
No, the individuals were able to take a tax deduction. So those people who were deducting could write it down as a charitable deduction. And that's, depending on your tax situation, can be as good. The reason that we didn't go with the LLC at that time, there were fewer of these around in Michigan, and our bandwidth wouldn't, it seemed simpler to just twist the elbows and raise the money and put it on the roof. Now, though, I think that pursuing PPAs more generally, it's becoming, there are more places that have done it. We've got folks that we can turn to, and I think it is something that people should consider as an alternative way to go. I would note that the cost of the systems, even since we went in 2017, has declined significantly. Mm-hmm. So there are any number of arguments for putting in these kind of rooftop systems, both to impact your house of worship bottom line, its leadership role in what are you doing about climate change, and also to get people's thinking moving in the community.
John, this is Mark Clevey. I have a question. David, your project is fantastic, and congratulations on getting on Maple's board. Charles Morris and I were the co-founders of Maple, so I'm glad to see that you're joining it, and as one of the solar leaders, I think that's really important. I would like to just point out, I did a little analysis of the HAZLIT program a couple of years ago when the Maple meeting was at your church. I think one of the important pieces here is your payback on your system is 15 years or less. People who are doing PPAs, while they get a savings, you know, the vast majority of the benefit of the solar system goes to the investors, whereas for you, your system will be paid off in 15 years and you will have clear money going forward. So I guess I would urge you to look at, I'll bet that your solar system is ultimately going to underwrite a significant part of the cost of your food program. So for those churches that are have a mission or are mission oriented, looking at doing the model the way that the Hazlitt Church did, as opposed to a PPA, I'd strongly encourage that analysis be done by the solar team, because I think on balance, while churches are a great opportunity for investors and others, you know, the benefits of going the distance and, you know, diverting some of your annual contributions and stuff to a dedicated fund for the purpose of solar, I think in the end, it might be a better deal. So congratulations on your project.
Mark, thank you so much for your comments and also your leadership in getting Michigan Interfaith Power and Light started. So I neglected to add one detail I think that's quite interesting. At our solar summit in March, after the Islamic Center of East Lansing had announced that they were going to install their own solar, they also announced that a generous donor from their congregation was giving the neighbor church, University Lutheran, $25,000 to seed a solar project, which I can say really kick-started University Lutheran's project, and now both neighboring houses of worship are fully into solar, and I think that kind of generosity should not be underestimated. Thank you.
John, you're on mute.
Muted. John,
you are in mute and you are sharing your screen with your email also.
Yeah, I'm unmuted now. So can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
We can, and we can read your email.
I know, and I'm trying to figure out how to. I did something that I've got to get. I don't want my email.
Share screen, John. You hit your shared screen. That's what happened.
Try unsharing and then go back in.
Right.
Okay, there we go. Okay, I'm sorry. So thank you very much, David. You did a great job. Very fascinating. So now we're going to turn to Ray Myers of Michigan Solar Solutions, who is going to talk about their new Riverdale office, which is going to be a zero net energy commercial space. Ray, take it away.
Well, hello everyone. How's everybody doing today? Good to see everybody's faces. So I'm here to show you guys the Riverdale office here for Michigan Solar Solutions in our net zero building. See if I can figure out how to flip my camera here or not. All right, so let's go ahead and start inside. So this is our off of now. It's some Solar Edge technology, a 10,000 inverter. Pretty much this whole place running. As John was mentioning, this is we're transitioning to net zero here. So this building has produced all the energy that it has consumed over the last year. In fact, if we look over here, you're gonna see we've got these mini split units that we've installed, and this has allowed us to heat
I don't see anything. Are other people seeing the information?
I can see.
Go into speaker view,
He only has the little box. It'd be nice if he could have the whole screen.
Right.
If you go into the speaker view, you'll be able to see it on your screen.
Speaker view. I'm not sure what that means.
Upper right-hand corner of your screen.
Oh. Well, that didn't do it. I'm sorry, can other people see it?
We can, John, you could also right-click on the person who's presenting and spotlight his video.
Okay. Right click. Well, I'm right clicking. Anyway, I don't want to take time away. So if other people can see it, then let's keep going. Go ahead, Ray. Ray?
Ray, you're muted.
Can you hear me?
Now we can. Go ahead.
All right. So this is one of the mini split units that we put in that allows us to completely heat and cool the building using the electricity produced by our panels. And that has allowed us to put our propane outside completely on mothball. We actually didn't use any of it at all last year, so that's really cool. Another addition I want to show you guys that we have in the office here is these solar light tubes, which you'll see a little bit outside. These are a really great way to light a room, especially a room that doesn't have any windows, for free. The nice thing about the light from these as well, and we'll walk into this one, this is a room that has absolutely no windows, and everything is lit just by that one little solar tube there. And that allows us to, again, light completely for free. It matches the body's circadian rhythms a little bit better. And what's really nice is if there's actually a full moon outside, instead of glowing white like that, it'll at nighttime glow like an orange color, and it serves as kind of a night light, which is really cool. So, and I apologize for right on the highway here, folks, so it is going to get a little bit loud here in a second, probably some car noise, but I'm going to do the best I can for you. So we're heading out outside of the front of the building here. So this is the front side of the office. This faces south-southeast, and we've got 28 280-watt Solaria panels up there that power the entire building on this side, and I'll also show you a little test for running in the back. But that's been able to, again, achieve all of the power that we use here at this building. And as you can see right there, the sign says solar-powered building. And these panels have been up for quite a little while now. But something that's a new addition is our warehouse here. And as you can see, we've got some panels on the warehouse as well. We've got 12 270-watt Soneva panels up there. And this is an off-grid system. Since we don't have to run much in here other than lights. You can see here we've got panels all over the place, being staged for future jobs. The exciting part is over here. So this is our Outback inverter that we've got here, our Outback off-grid inverter. And that pretty much powers everything, the lights, everything we need to run this building. And then we've got our charge controller as well as the main there. And the main is really the piece of equipment that allows us to see everything that's going on with the system, allows us to see what the building's consuming and what the panels are putting out and how much charge is in the batteries. Now, this is our battery cabinet here. And we have it set up like this because these are the old style lead acid batteries. So we want to make sure that no one accidentally drops a wrench or anything on them. So they're nice and protected, as well as being a little bit out of the elements there. So that's our off-grid warehouse. Sneak around to the back side of the building here. One last bumblebee chasing me around. Haven't seen one of those in a couple weeks. Then outside here, you can see we've got our mini split unit on the outside that's powering the unit on the inside. And then these are what those solar light tubes look like. They're just got a little dome on the top and very reflective material on the inside. And that just shoots light in. They're great, again, for any room you want to light. That's an inside room that doesn't have windows. Works great in bedrooms as long as you're an early riser. And then here's another thing, a little test we're doing on the back. So we have 6 different panels up there, two of 3 different kinds. We've got some of the Jinko panels, Jinko 320-watt panels up on the right-hand side. We've got some LG 335-watt panels in the middle. And then we also have some Panasonic 330-watt panels up there on the left. And these are northwest-facing panels, which historically is not necessarily the best thing to do, but we're trying it out to see how well it actually works, see if it's a good enough impact from a financial side to make sense for Michiganders. The other cool thing that we're running here is, although we'd love to believe marketing material that every company puts out and says their solar panel is the best, we are actually testing 3 different modules that we sell side by side to, the proof's in the pudding. So that's the basic setup here at the office. I don't have a whole lot other stuff to show you folks. Do you have any questions for me?
So Ray, are you completely off grid?
No, just that warehouse is off grid. The system here on the main part of the office is grid tied. I'm just gonna head back inside so I can hear you folks a little bit better.
I just had a comment, Ray. I love that you're testing the different solar panels.
Yeah, again, you can look at spec sheets and look at marketing and stuff, but it's just in our view better to run the real test and see, the proof will be in the pudding. We'll just look it up on our solar edge monitoring after we get through a full year of production, and see where we're at with them.
Other questions for Ray? Any other questions? David Arnosti, do you have a question? You always have questions about Mark Levy. Anyway, well, thank you so much, Ray. This has been great. Ray is with Michigan Solar Solutions, one of the great GLREA members, and we certainly appreciate Mark Haggerty's support over the years and everything. So we have a little bit of time before our next episode, or if Heidi is available, we could go right to her. Heidi,
I'm here.
Okay, thank you very much, Ray, and we'll turn it over to Heidi then. Thank you.
All right. Let me share my screen. Take all the faces out of the way first. All right, can everyone see my screen?
Yep.
Let's try to hide this. All right. All right, so we have two solar installations that were done in 2 different years. We purchased this home and we knew we needed to do a re-roof, not totally necessary for solar. But we also knew that time in 2015, someone can jump in and tell me what the year was, the net metering was up in the Michigan legislature for possibly going away at that time, 2015, 2014, I can't remember the exact year. And when we started looking for solar, it was actually very difficult at that time for us to find a solar installer. We're so happy that there's a local solar installer in the Lansing area now, and I'll talk a bit about that later in my presentation. But at the time, we just wanted to get some solar on, so we were in the net metering program. And so on the left there, you can see we did a garage solar installation. And so we re-roofed the garage. Unfortunately, it was a different shingle color. Re-roofed the garage first, and then we did the second solar installation 3 years later last year in 2019. So the first installation, when we found a solar installer, Peninsula Solar, who's up in the Upper Peninsula, we did that in early spring of 2016. And we got into net metering. It's on the garage, as I showed you, and here's some of the specs that we have. And it was actually snowing a couple of the days that they installed, and I had some slides of those in a previous presentation. So that was our first solar system, and we did not get a monitor put on when we initially installed this. And that's one of my advice for people is get a monitor right away, because that will, I'm not sure why we decided not to, but that'll show you what your actual production is. You can't totally see it from your net metering, because you don't know what actually you're consuming versus what's going out to the, in addition to what's going out to consumers in our case. So I always advise getting a meter right away. And so we got that put on, I think, in late 2017, right before we did a solar open house, and we could show it on our iPads and everything. And then our second solar system was in May 2019. It was after we had done an addition on our house, and so we had gotten a new roof on the main part of the house. And you can see a little bit here where this is, sorry, this is before our second, I had this on a slider for one of our, a slideshow timer for one of our open houses, and I guess I didn't take it off. But you can see on the garage there is our first solar installation, and then we got this addition put on over here, and we re-roofed the entire house. And then this was the area that we did our second installation. So at that point, when we did our second installation, we have Absolute Environmental Solutions here in the local Lansing area. They also did our Meridian Township Solar Array and work extensively with the Meridian Township Energy team. And they found us a kind of a black that looked nicer with the roof, you know, kind of looked really integrated with the black roof. And that was really great. And so we used our local company for our second solar system, which was installed right here across the back. And you can see the two solar systems together. So in 2016, we paid, we had the re-roof, which I took out, but we paid a net cost of about $10,000. And then that was for 12 panels. And then for 2019, we did an additional 9 panels, and that was a net cost about $5,000. And then you can see some of our our net metering bills from 2020. You know, they come on a spreadsheet from consumers, and so I just put those here, what the inflow was, the outflow was, and then what our excess generation is. And we used a lot of air conditioning in June and July. We didn't initially have air conditioning in our house, so the first couple years when we had solar, we had a lot of net excess in the summer just because we didn't have air conditioning and we weren't running heat, which takes, you know, some electricity. And then I've done kind of at the bottom here, the end phase is our monitor and what we were producing each month across the 21 panels, and then approximately just taking 15 cents, you know, what the savings were in electricity. And to be fair, I put in February and March, you know, what our inflow and outflow was, you know, just to show that you know, we were using much more than we were producing during February and March. But in one of my presentations, if you look on the Meridian Township Solar Stories, I show a diagram of a friend of mine who has a pretty similar house layout in that they have no second level and no basement, and showed their kind of graph of the year. And in North Carolina, which everyone thinks of as the South, and I used to live there, you know, they have a winter too, and they have their production in the winter too. So it was interesting to look at her graph. She just got her system installed last year versus Michigan, and also, you know, just compare those. So I think that was about it, because it was a 5-slide presentation. I do have that other presentation up here just to show you that I'm telling you the truth about this. This is a North Carolina graph of production. You can see it halves in the winter as well. So I thought that was kind of interesting. So that's what I have. Does anyone have any questions about these 5 slides? And if the questions bring up something from the other presentation, I'll pull some of those slides up.
Questions for Heidi?
Yeah.
This is Mark. My same question. This is linked to Lansing Water and Light, or to consumers? You're
consumers. We're on consumers.
It's consumers. Okay. Oh,
yeah. Yeah. I'm just flipping through the slides in case someone has a question on them.
Is there anything from the other system that is unique that maybe people be interested in learning about?
From which other system? I'm sorry.
Well, the other presentation that you were kind of referencing.
Oh, the one I did a couple weeks ago.
Yeah.
Well, my kind of thing I always emphasize with solar is that, you know, and I guess I put this here, it really makes you start to think about efficiency, because you start to size your solar panels, and then it's like budgeting, or if you try to lose weight or something, you start looking at what you're similar in terms of it's looking at your numbers, right? When you start to size your solar, you start looking about how much energy you use, and you start looking at, well, how can I reduce some of my energy so I don't have to have as many solar panels, I don't need to use as much energy. And I like to think of it as, you use less energy, reduce energy efficiency, and then you're reusing the sun, right? And it doesn't get used up. So that was one thing. And then there's our garage installation. Probably I didn't get to see a lot of the presentations this morning, but it's a lot about carbon footprint, being modern, trying to be more sustainable. And we like the look of the black roof, but one of the reasons we chose it was because to get a little extra heat absorption in the winter, because that's when we use most of our energy. And then one of the other things, I don't know if anyone's called this out, is that in the summer that the solar, those 21 panels absorb a lot of the heat, and so they don't cause the sun to cause so much need for air conditioning. So I guess those were some of the points from my other presentation. I'm just paging through that now. This is the friend's house that's similar, and they put their panels on the side addition there. They have the same addition that I do. Yeah, and I get the AC need is only going to go up with climate change. And living in I'm really glad I don't live in North Carolina now, because it's just getting hotter and hotter, and yeah.
So your friends in North Carolina definitely think climate change is real?
Oh yeah. Yep. It is getting hotter, and everybody has AC there, or not everybody, people with enough money to have it, or you have some kind of window air conditioning. But it's more pleasant to be outside a lot of times, right, instead of in air conditioning. So that's what I had from the other presentation. Anyone have any questions?
Hello, Heidi. This is Bob in Grand Rapids. I also got Solar World panels. I think it said you got those. Do you know if Solar World is still around, or if they've gone out of business?
I do not. Does anyone else know?
I don't know if Absolute Solar is still on or not, but they might know.
Yeah.
Yeah, we're still here. I'm not sure if Solar World is or not. I know with that particular system with you, Heidi, we had the 295 watt Canadian solar, which is what we used on there. But yeah, Solar World, you know what? I'm not sure. I would have to check in with you on that.
I was just curious because I did a Google search recently. I couldn't come up with anything.
Well, there has been a shaking out of the solar panel industry over the last several years. I mean, Suniva used to have a major presence in Michigan, and then they got bought out by the Chinese and left. So that's just one example. So any other questions for Heidi?
Yeah, Heidi, did you use the same inverters on the second system and that you did on the first system?
I don't think we did we, Rob or Dan? Do you remember? I think
yeah, we did. So that was, hey, this is Dan. So that was part of it.
Yeah.
Is an N-phase system. The original was N-phase microinverters. So for the second system that we installed, we also used N-phase microinverters. And in that way, it allows the system to have all the monitoring data in the same place. So that's why we kept it similar and compatible.
And one thing, when we did our first system, we knew we were going to add more after we did the addition and re-roofed. And so, it had been set up, the electrical had been set up to handle, you know, adding another system. So the other thing I would say is one of the other things about our monitor, and I don't know if this is what caused the issue, Dan or Rob, but you know, we didn't get a monitor to begin with, and then I believe we got one that someone just had, and it was older. And you know, we're in technology, and technology changes so fast. You know, I would really get the latest and greatest, you know, in terms of monitors, because we can see our total production, but we can't, some of the reports, we can't get the two monitors to work together. And that's just the way technology is. It's just how it is sometimes, that, you know, things evolve and innovate, and sometimes they don't play nicely with older versions. So
that's for sure.
Yeah. So.
Hey, John Freeman.
Yep.
This is Bob Sink again. You had asked me the company that Chuck Almond has, my installer. I put it in the chat. It's and Design LLC.
Okay, thank you. Thank you very much. Okay, any final questions for Heidi? Okay, well, thank you very much, Heidi. I really appreciate it for your presentation. Heidi did a full hour on her system on Solar Stories a few weeks back and did a great job. I just want to take a quick moment just to recognize our sponsors again. You know, we've had 3 sponsors for this event. One is Harvest Solar, Ken Zabara's company, Absolute Environmental Solutions, and then S-Power. And so I really want to thank our sponsors for this program and for supporting the Great Lakes Renewable Energy Association. We're a little bit early. Diane, are you prepared to talk about D2 Solar and some of the projects in Detroit?
Hi. Do you hear an echo?
No, it sounds
okay.
Good.
I'm hearing an echo, so that's a little confusing. I'm going to take my earphones out. No. Can you hear me now?
Yes.
No, I can't do it that way. Okay. 1 minute. I tried being all set and ready to go.
It's okay. I've made a few mistakes.
This echo is going to drive me crazy, but I guess I'll deal with it. Hi, everybody. So how many people are on now? Quite a few, huh?
We have 28 or so.
Okay. I'm going to share with you a solar tour. So let me see if I can share screen.
Diane, okay. It looks to me like you're, Diane, you have 2 things open at once. I see you twice on the screen. That may be account for the echo because you're in there.
Well, the problem is my computer doesn't have the right video. So I'm the worst one to try to do this. So I have my presentation all set to go. And now I'm not doing it. So do I, okay. There it is, share screen. I've done this a million times. Why can't I do it?
Sometimes the second share screen you have to hit shows up somewhere across the screen. You want to look for that.
There's a young woman named Anna that I think was helpful for me earlier this morning.
I've done this all sorts of times already. Okay. Diane C., are you on?
Yes, I'm on.
Hi, Diane C. Can you start the 71 Garfield video?
Okay. Do you want to give any kind of intro to it, or should
Okay, yes, I will.
Okay.
So we're going to start with a video that Diane Cheklich, my partner in crime with D2 Solar. We have a solar warehouse here in Detroit, and our goal is to move the needle on solar in Detroit. So we'll be talking about that for the next hour, plus showing you lots of examples of projects here in Detroit. Brandon Knight's going to be joining us to talk about EcoWorks and what the great project is that nonprofit's been able to do. And then I also have a residential project and a really cool tiny homes project that we can talk through. But first, who remembers Solyndra? Speaking of solar companies that have gone out of business, this is the one that Obama took the hit for back in 2012 when they had the incentives and the company went bust. But I have a Solyndra solar project in Detroit. So Diane's going to show that video while I get the slide presentation cranked up.
Can everyone see this?
Yep.
Okay, here we go. Oops.
It was a throwaway district. The city did.
Oops, let me start from the beginning.
This whole area was slated for demolition. It was a throwaway district. The city didn't want it. It was full of this hodgepodge of old apartment buildings, a lot of crime. We started working on a market study, though, and could see this wonderful location between Wayne State and the hospitals and downtown and the north side, and thought, why? Why are these buildings slated for demolition? So back in 1990, started to petition with the City Historic Designation Advisory Board that this really should be a historic district. We did the history of the area to get it designated as a historic district and found that the most interesting part of it was the fact that this was the neighborhood that Berry Gordy found Motown. And that was because it was all the jazz clubs were here. There were the Chesterfield Lounge and the Flame Show Bar and the Garfield Lounge, and one after another populated this neighborhood. And it was called a black and tan kind of establishments where race didn't matter at a time when race did matter. And when it came to this building, there had been 5 fires and it was in pretty rough shape. No roof in places, no walls in other places, but still enough fabric and enough building left to go ahead. But what it gave us the chance to do, especially since this was 2008, was to put into practice a lot of the theory that we'd been trying to help others with, which is how do you finance a renewable energy project? And it also just so happened that this was the time when President Obama's tax credits came into play. The building was all set to go for renovation, and it was, wait a second, engineer this over again. We're going to put in geothermal and solar. Let's see what that looks like. It was like one more step to look at how to make a renewable energy historic building work. And some extra guidelines came into play, such as you couldn't put big giant solar panels on a roof that would be visible from the street. But Solyndra had a product that laid flat and that was tubes instead of the standard snowplow looking solar panel, which turned out to be a really superior solar panel. At the same time, DTE came up with their solar currents program. So we bought into that. So it kind of fell into place, taking this really complicated idea of how do you take a historic wreck of a building and create a renewable energy project out of it. We decided, let's just do the right thing. And what would the right thing be? You preserve the building, you make it beautiful again, you make it a quality place for people to live, and you do no harm to the environment as a result. And it turned out to be this really great case study now. And it's been a fabulous building. Knowing that the rainwater that falls on the roof does not end up in the storm sewers. Knowing that the energy bills that we have are 1/4 of what they would have been if we'd used traditional heating and cooling. And knowing that every day that the sun shines, we're shaving about half of our electric bill off that day. It's not about the cheapest bottom line if it's something that's going to have an impact for the next century or more. And I think that the care for the earth, if anybody has any care for the city or care for the future of our children or care for anything, then it goes hand in hand with, if we're going to rehab a building, why would we put systems in it that aren't the most energy efficient? Or why would we do something that would create a problem down the line for another generation to solve? Our solar system is a 20 kilowatt system. We also have a solar thermal system off the back of the building, and that preheats hot water as well. So we have 2 solar systems on the rooftop. So our kilowatt on a monthly basis is 1,593 kilowatt hours per month. For the whole year, we're shaving about 15% of our total usage off our bill with the 20 kilowatts. Now, mind you, this is a 27,000 square foot building, and it's apartments as well as commercial uses. So you have 20 refrigerators and dishwashers, and we have utility or laundry on each floor. We have the tea shop with all sorts of things humming along down there. It's a 24-hour building. So what we pay for all the lights, all the electricity, not including the heat, which is the geothermal system, which is something else. For our power on a monthly basis, it ranges from $600 to $800 a month for a 27,000 square foot building. So the secret to that is that you have an energy efficient building first and foremost. So all the lights are LEDs, and all the dishwashers and refrigerators are all energy savers. We have lots of windows because it's a historic building, so a lot of times you don't need to turn on lights in a unit. So we really try to stress that with energy education with our tenants when they come in. They all love the fact that they don't pay a utility bill. So we say, well, then please show us your love back, and don't keep the air conditioner blasting all day when you're not home, and turn off the lights and do the right thing. So I know some households where the house bill could be that high for just a house. So we think we're doing pretty well. Too often in the building industry, the first time cost is the only cost that's considered. And when you own and operate a building for several years, you can start to see the difference. And it's really tested itself out. So we're now planning our very first brand new building that's going in across the street from us here at 71 Garfield. And to me, the greatest part about that building is that it will be off the charts to that building. And so we know that solar works. We know that geothermal works. We know that the hard surfaces work. We know that the energy efficiency works. And so all those arguments of first time cost, we know you pay for the next 20, 30 years. And if you care about these things, then you realize that, yes, there is a cost, but those costs only go up for operating a building as time goes on. So not only does the cost go up, but the burden on our environment goes up. So do the right thing. Do it from the start.
So, thank you. And I don't know if you know that Diane Cheklich is also a videographer and does great work. So that was produced a few years back. I'm happy to say that the building continues to hum along with that solar system. we haven't been hit yet with the reducing the net metering because we're over 10 years now. And with the new tariff, we're kind of curious how that's going to work. But on the other hand, we don't send anything back to the grid anyway, because with a building this size, there just doesn't make any sense. It uses every bit it gets. Any questions? As
No,
I'm
but
going to now.
it was a
try
great
to-
video. Very, very impressive.
I love that video. I'd forgotten about it actually. So thank you, Diane, for reminding me. Okay, so if I go back to shared screen, I should have solved all this by now, right? Is that up? Okay. I don't know what I'm doing wrong. I've done this. Are you seeing the strange thing I have?
Nope,
No.
just seeing you.
When you click it, do you see like different windows on your computer that you can choose from?
Yeah, but it's strange things. So Diane, I hate to ask you this again, but I did send you this. And you see why you have partners sometimes, because one is much better at things than the other. Yeah, I've got it set up. Share screen.
There you go. Well, I think something. There you
Is
go.
that what we want to see?
Detroit Solar Tour.
Yes. Okay.
All
So
right.
now I need to change it so it's the full screen. Sometimes the magic works. Okay, so here in Detroit, as we said earlier, there are a variety of projects that we can be talking about. I'm going to have some folks jump in and help talk about it. But we just talked about 71 Garfield. That renovation project was back in 2009. And the Solar Currents program was kind of new with DTE, which I think they only kept it for a couple of years before they decided they didn't really need to meet the 2008 energy bill requirements. But in the meantime, look at the cost for 20 kilowatts. Who thinks that was a good idea? It really demonstrates how far we've come. Now that also included the hot water system, how to get all that done. But we were able to get a $78,000 tax credit. And with that old Solar Currents program, they pre-bought the RECs. And that's why they gave it anyway, because they needed those RECs. So still the total cost was $134,000. And we didn't know at the time that we could have taken some of the cost of that white roof. But that's to remind you that we went from no roof to 20 kilowatts with that cylinder system. One reason with the historic building, that's why we had to search out the best way to get the panels up. Now they're a lot more lenient in Detroit with historic buildings about putting up solar. So we're going to now go from commercial to the Rising Pheasant Farm. This is located on the east side of Detroit. The family, anyone at Eastern Market has seen Rising Pheasant Farm. And they ride their bicycles. They don't own a car. They produce all their own, those are sunflower seeds that you see. So they did until a lot of restaurants closed. They provided all the sunflower shoots and they ride their bikes 12 months out of the year. They're out there. but they also have a huge farm, and their electric needs in their house are pretty low, because you can imagine they're pretty off grid, but they had electric uses related to the farm. So we helped them get the first urban USDA rural grants. And I'm trying to think, about 3 years ago, we went up to Traverse City for one of the big conferences up there, and I was able to meet the USDA guys then and talked about how Detroit has urban farmers and why can't they get the rural grant. So they gave it a chance, and in the past year, they were able to get their system up on the roof. So they got about $1,000 off their system. I don't believe it was quite 10 kilowatts, but mainly what it operates is a CoolBot system. I don't know if you know how that works, but in cooling, like shipping containers use them. They use an indoor room in their house. They put in an air conditioner, and then the CoolBot tricks the air conditioner into supercooling. And so that takes electricity. The other thing they need their electricity for is a pumping system. So they've put in giant water storage containers from the roof of their house. And the pump that sends that water out into the fields uses a lot of the electricity. So this summer, Jack told me last week that they have banked, because they squeezed in and got net metering, they have banked enough solar now that they're pretty confident they still won't have an electric bill this winter. So it really helps them. And we hope to get more urban farms here in Detroit. My next, any questions on urban farms? This was a strawberry solar installation, by the way. And I think those are our D2 panels as well.
Well, this is John Freeman. Ken Zabara mentioned that Harvest Energy also is able to access the REAP grants for farms in rural parts. So it's wonderful that D2 Solar and Strawberry Solar are able to get REAP grants for urban farming as well.
Yeah, this is the first. So it's a little harder in the urban situation because a lot of the urban farms here are nonprofit. And the requirement is that it has to be for-profit, and it can't be more than 50% of the household income, or it has to be at least 50% of the household income. And so for a lot of folks, they don't fit that category. But it also helps, in this case, they weren't able to take the tax credit because their income is low. They have 4 children. They don't pay a lot of taxes. So the program really worked for them. And yes, that's the REAP program. I'm going to move on to tiny homes. And this is again where Diane Cheklich might pipe in now and then. But this is a really cool project. I don't know how many people have seen this off the Lodge Freeway as you're leaving Detroit going out. But they have built for low-income households, and mainly the organization, Cass Community Service, provides assistance to persons who have been incarcerated or drug problems, or they really do need a new job, a new way of life. So they go through a whole program with Cass Community Services with working, and then they can own a tiny house. And the tiny houses are, as you can see, they're pretty small, but it's building out to be a full neighborhood now. There's 19 of them, and each house, tiny house, has a 1.8 array. So there's a total of 34 kilowatts. They're freestanding, as you can see. This is construction. You can see what's going on. They've had a few issues that have come up that Faith Fowler, the director of Cass Community Services, and also the pastor of Cass Community Church in the Cass Corridor, has told us. And that is, for a lot of people in low income, depend on having a 12-month bill that's divided separately. And once they went to the solar program, they don't allow that anymore. So it's hard for people to budget. But each array, as you can see, is devoted to each individual house. I still have the echo, so I'm sorry if I'm stumbling. Diane C., do you have anything you want to add with tiny homes? I know they're working on a car wash now idea that will be solar powered.
Yeah, I do want to go back to your comment about the payment plan that the residents are on, because that is an issue for people who are involved in policy, that the people who are on payment plans and used to paying a fixed amount every month can no longer do that if they have solar. And these houses are 100% electric homes, so they have higher heating bills in the winter. That 1.8 kilowatts doesn't offset everything. And so, like Diane was talking about in her Garfield video, where residents are asked to not leave their windows open in the winter and things like that. Those kinds of behavioral things are encouraged. But from a policy point of view, there's really no reason why they shouldn't be able to be on a payment plan and be able to budget for that. So that's something that I've heard about more than once, and it's something to keep in mind as we talk to lawmakers about ways that we can improve access and equity for solar.
Have you talked with DTE about this?
Strawberry has, and they hit a wall. They don't get any support for trying to make that happen. So there has been an attempt, but it hasn't worked very well.
We should talk about that at some point.
So okay, that would be really great, because they're just going to continue to build out this neighborhood more and more. And Faith is very devoted to having solar. They have it on their own buildings now. They use, they're planning a car wash that will have solar power. And what's great about these is designers, architects from around the country are now offering design plans so they can be a part of this whole program. And it's really worth a visit all of its own. Anybody coming to Detroit, contact us, because it's just a wonderful little neighborhood, the way it's been building. I'm gonna jump back now to a residential home and see if my neighbor is ready to jump on with me here. So part of the problem with Detroit and in many older communities is how many trees we have. Lots of trees, but then we also have historic neighborhoods. So this is a case of a family that really wanted to demonstrate their commitment to the environment and put some solar on their roof. And so it wasn't as easy as it might seem. And now my neighbor has walked away. She was going to join us. So let me yell out here and see if she's here. So, Trina, are you here? Well, today's a volunteer day at our building, and people are outside working, cleaning up stuff. So we have more than one thing going on. So we'll skip that one and come back to it when she comes back in. Brandon Knight is going to be joining us in just a few minutes. So maybe my timing is not working. I'm gonna have to go back and do Trina's on my own because she went back out to volunteer. So as I was saying, so with the historic homes, we do have the problem of the trees. We also have some lovely things. This is what they've done with their backyard swimming pool, which was, when they moved in, it was an abandoned junky thing. But her husband is a biology teacher, and he decided they would make an eco pool. And that's a giant fish pond and a science experiment in the neighborhood. So all the kids love coming to feed the fish. So with their system, with a lot of trees, they were able to squeeze panels on that dormer, which you can't quite see. And then on the back porch and also on the side. We did not have problems with the Historic District Commission. I'm curious if anybody else around the state has had difficulty getting through their Historic District Commissions, Ann Arbor in particular. But since it went on the back, it was okay. You can see would have been much better in the front, but that wasn't a possibility. Well, when she comes back in, she can tell more of her story. What's interesting is we've been looking at her bills, and the bills have not gone down. On the other hand, this is where the usage has gone down, but the electric rates, and John, you were just talking about this before I came on, the electric rates have gone up. And so for a small array, they're just not seeing the savings. On the other hand, they've never felt comfortable turning the air conditioning on in the summer, and this year they did. So they did have higher consumption because they were able to use the electricity and stay the same with the bills.
The savings are essentially invisible to them. They are saving money that's just invisible.
They are.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, and she brought in her bills for me, and the electric usage has been pretty, has gone up over the years, but the cost is still about the same. So, and there's no swimming in that pool. Okay, so back to tiny homes. Brandon, are you on? I told him 1 o'clock. Okay, any questions so far with what we have?
Diane, this is Heidi. This is a fabulous presentation. And I love
Thank you for saying that because it feels very odd from my side.
The initial building that you renovated, I love that. One of the things I do on my solar tours is talk about, when we used to have them in person, is, you know, that the greenest building is a building that's already there, right?
Right.
And yeah, and then the tiny houses is very interesting, kind of a worldwide movement right now. So.
Yeah, and Faith Fowler is the one who has really been instrumental in getting that off the ground. And she's a great fundraiser. And so she's able, with the tiny homes, I think people just, you know, they like it better so they can see what it is.
How many square feet is a tiny home?
I think it's 400 to 500 square feet. That's it. And they kind of loft them up. And that's how they're able to go 100% electric.
Yeah, there's different definitions of tiny versus very small versus medium. Another thing I show on my tours is kind of the square foot per person throughout the world compared to the US, et cetera. And, you know, 1,500 square feet, which is what our house was originally, was, you know, is not considered tiny or small, but it is in the US, right?
Yeah. Have you ever seen the book where they go around the world and all the belongings of people are in the picture?
Yeah, I saw an exhibit of that at a museum.
Okay, so Brandon, are you on? Well, I guess I'm gonna go on again and keep talking. So EcoWorks is an organization that I have to stop hearing myself. That many people remember was warm training. They started back in the 1980s, and oh, I've got things clicking on here all over the place. They were founded in 1981 as a Detroit-based nonprofit that creates just, equitable, and inclusive solutions to climate change and other community sustainability challenges. They have several organizations within. There's the EcoD and Energy Youth Squad. They do workshops, trainings. They've been able to work in schools. They've been the green leaders, and they have quite a force here in Detroit. They started a program, Net Zero for All, starting today, which is called Net Zero Fast campaign, to support organizations and municipalities across Southeast Michigan in achieving carbon neutrality, reducing energy costs, and increasing equity and resilience. So as part of that idea for net zero, they wanted to implement them in their new building in Northwest Detroit. Now, it's not so new, but it's a fabulous building. And it's a Yamasaki building. And for those who have been in Detroit, you know that Minoru Yamasaki had quite an influence in Detroit architecture, especially Wayne State. So when you see that roof, there's a lot of buildings on Wayne State's campus. The gas, what we used to call the gas building down on Jefferson, has that roof. But most famously, that exoskeleton design that you see there is what was the trademark of the World Trade Center. So Yamasaki was the designer of the World Trade Center.
Diana,
but his offices were here in Detroit.
Diane, I think Brandon's on now.
Okay, that is great. Brandon, are you on?
Yes, I'm on.
Okay, thank you for joining us. So
No
we
problem.
were going through how the Yamasaki building, they were able to, EcoWorks purchased it in 2017. It was originally the 1958 American Concrete Institute. So now they've done a full LED lighting retrofit, upgraded their roof insulation, added a white reflective roof membrane, and added a 40 kilowatt rooftop solar array. And the building is in like 2 separate pieces. So they were able to implement 2 separate 20 kilowatt systems as a result. So Brandon, you were the solar installer. What can you tell us about this project?
Hey everybody. So yeah, our company did the installation. Actually, on that building, there isn't any solar panels on that building. It's all on the building next to it in the picture there to the right. And it was kind of interesting. So we with how we had to run our connections to get to, so we did split the project into 2 buildings, but the array was all on 1 building, and we were able to get that all through permitting and work with the city to run conduit from 1 building to the other building. There was a breezeway that we were able to run our connections over, but there's 2 different services there. And we also ran into a tricky voltage configuration that we see on this era of buildings, which is a 240 volt delta high leg 3-phase. And so we had to put single phase inverters on each phase. So we ended up with 6 inverters across the 2 services. So yeah, that's 3 of them there. So yeah, I mean, it was tricky. We went through a competitive bidding process. So we were up against probably a bunch of the people on this call. So that's always challenging. And then we had an interesting like roof configuration. So, or not configuration, but the roof is these like poured concrete forms on the roof that we put the panels up on. So getting our engineering stamps for submittals. Yeah, so yeah, you can see that we use ballasted racking. So that racking is made from Sinclair Engineering in Albion. So we worked with them, and so they actually make flat roof racking, and they make ground mount racking. Their ground mounts are pretty prominent throughout the state. You probably see them a lot. So that's local Michigan racking, which is cool. Their ground mounts are, you probably see these 2 high arrays with like single posts all over the state. That's Sinclair's racking system that a lot of people put their ground mounts in. So yeah, we were able to also keep the project's category 1 net metered. So we have like a 40 kilowatt array, but we are able to keep our interconnection applications into DTE to category 1. So it's a more, it's a better rate. We also were up against the net metering deadline when this installation was going in. So that added another level of responsibility and accountability that we had committed to getting them into the net metering program before it expired last year on November 5th. So we were in a race to get our electric permits and pull the whole project together, source materials. I believe we got the panels from D2 Solar, Diane.
Yes.
So so yeah, we are really fortunate to have D2 Solar in Detroit now. Is like, we're trying to kind of be like a production solar company cranking these solar arrays out. So a lot of times we go down to Diane's warehouse in the morning and go pick up panels for the day for the job we're going to. So so yeah, this was able to have, panels sourced from a local Detroit supplier. We use Michigan made racking system that's up on the roof. We were able to get it into category 1 for both arrays. We did something kind of interesting, having 1 array that we fed over to the other building. And then the other part of it was we did put it through Collective Sun's nonprofit process. And I'm actually kind of still going through that with them. It's my first time doing that. So it works. They did approve the project, and we're going to be paid like 15%, I think, of the project value, something like that. We're actually getting paid directly by Collective Sun. So EcoWorks only had to put up a certain amount of money, and they also financed it through Michigan Saves. So it was competitive bidding process, really challenging technical projects, also challenging from a financing perspective. But yeah, we pulled it off, and there it is. So yeah, that's about That's a long story, but yeah.
No, but it's a great story.
Well, maybe.
And they also wanted us to know that they have offset 38 megawatts, offsetting 26.5 MTCO. So they're doing their part of what they wanted to achieve with being a net zero building. Not there
Diane?
yet, but getting close. John?
Yeah, two quick questions. One, Brandon, could you maybe talk a little bit about your company? Because I don't think people know what the name of your firm is. And secondly, maybe take a second or two to explain what Collective Sun is. I don't know if many people are familiar with that organization or what their purpose is.
Yeah, so my company is distributed power. We're design build, and we develop our own projects, but we also do a lot of subcontracting for other companies' brands. So we're running around the whole state getting these arrays up. We have our own projects, but we do a lot of like basically white label installations for other companies. So we're really busy with that, and we've really tried to focus on learning commercial. So we've done about 10 commercial systems over the past year, EcoWorks being something I would consider commercial. And it's a different business model. The rate structure is cheaper for commercial, so there's less incentive when you're doing a ROI pitch. A lot of times, return on investment pitch to commercial. So so in that lane, the rates are already cheaper. Then you got nonprofits that can't even take the tax credit. So Collective Sun will step in and develop a what they call a solar power agreement, where they're on paper holding the ownership of the array for 5 years, and they're realizing the tax credit and doing their thing. And you send your project to them, you get it all approved through their system, and then they'll you give them your full contract, and the client, like EcoWorks in this situation, pays 85% of the 100% value. And because Collective Sun's processing all the tax credits, they're paying the installer 15% of the contract. So whereas we weren't able to use the federal tax credit or modified cost recovery system on this, we were able to still get them 15%, like realize some benefit of the tax credit. So Collective Sun is an organization based in California that focuses on that sweet spot there, like the space of, and there's other entities that do that. And, you know, we partner with Chart House Energy out of Muskegon also that does it in a completely different way and has enabled a lot of nonprofits. But Collective Sun's an option for a company like me. We combined financing with Michigan Saves. We then had an independent agreement with Collective Sun. Justin, the executive director, and the board from EcoWorks got involved. I will say that other nonprofits have felt uncomfortable about it and have opted out before, and not wanted to work with Collective Sun and didn't feel 100% comfortable. But in this situation, everybody was on board, and EcoWorks kind of wanted to be trying new things, and they wanted this to be a model for other nonprofit organizations. So they did go the Collective Sun route. I don't know how many projects in Michigan have used Collective Sun at this point, but it's the first one we've done with them.
Great. We have one more presentation that's going to be Diane's building, which is the first condo building that has worked out how to do a PPA. And then we're going to follow up very quickly with how we have a renewable energy committee here in Detroit as part of the Green Task Force. And EcoWorks is on our finance structuring committee. that we're just forming now. And we'll be exploring a lot of different models on how nonprofits and faith-based can be financing their projects. So I don't know if we're going to have time for that whole discussion at the end, but that's the tie-in here, that EcoWorks was great to be the first model. But there's a lot of other models we're going to be exploring. So we're doing the case study on EcoWorks. So Diane, you're going to share Willie's Lofts.
Yes, thank you, and hello everybody. I am Diane Cheklich, the other half of D2 Solar, business partners with Diane Van Buren. And like Diane talked about her solar on her apartment building, I'll be talking about solar on my condominium building, which is like a few blocks away from Diane's. So we are definitely tag teaming to bring more solar into the city of Detroit. Can everyone see this?
See, you know how to do it so quickly.
Well, you're getting there.
Okay.
So my building is Willie's Overland Lofts, and we are in the Cass Corridor in Detroit. We're a multi-unit condominium in a 100-year-old building, which has some interesting history itself. It used to be the sales and service building for the World War II Willys Overland Jeeps. And you can see in the photo on the right-hand side, the developer of the building tried to keep that character and some of that heritage in the building. We do have a flat membrane roof and and high electric bills. Our developer here was not one of the developers like Diane who wanted to put in all kinds of energy efficiencies and save money on the operations of the building. So we have a central common area electric bill that runs the things like the elevators, lights, garage doors, and things like that. And that was running us around $30,000 a year just for those common area electric bills. And then each one of the individual units has our own connection to DTE, or a separate meter. So I'm on the sustainability committee and saw this as an opportunity in the building. So a couple years ago, we had a conversion to LED lighting in our common areas. Our hallway lights, our garage lights are on 24 hours a day. And so we took advantage of some of the rebates and incentives that were out there and converted all of our common area lights to LED. And so that has saved us quite a bit of money, and the payback on that, when you take the incentives into account, was actually very short. One of the interesting efficiency moves that we did was in our parking garage, each fixture has room for 3 bulbs. And so instead of putting in all 3 bulbs, we only put in 2. And so we're saving 33% right off the bat by just not even having one of those bulbs in there. We still get sufficient light. It's just in the parking garage, but that was kind of a cool low-tech way to save 1/3 of our parking garage electricity consumption. We also put in our stairwells motion activated lights. People are not typically going up and down the stairs during the middle of the night, so those completely turn off, and we save 8 to 10 hours of electricity usage by having those be motion activated. So we're happy with the energy efficiency steps that we've taken in the building. And the next move was to consider going solar. I have experience on solar project at the Ferndale First United Methodist Church. You can see the photos there. And that also has a flat membrane roof, and we implemented it using a power purchase agreement, third-party investor model. So I have familiarity with that as well. So I started thinking about what could work here at Willie's Lofts. And we put out a survey to the owners in the building to say, hey, are you interested in solar? If so, are you interested in owning it as association members? You know, which would have entailed a special assessment because we didn't have the money in our budget. But we did find out that people who live in a condominium, even though it's paid through the purchase could be paid through the association, individual unit owners could still take the federal tax credit. So that was something that we thought might be attractive to people. And we discussed it among our board as well, whether the building wanted to own it or whether the building was comfortable with third-party ownership. What were some of the ways we could finance it? If we didn't have the money in the budget, could we take out a loan? Would we be comfortable with that? And after all of those inputs, and that was, you know, quite a few moving parts in there between all the owners and the board and some of the back and forth. There was, when we did that community survey, there was about a 50% were interested in paying for it through special assessment and the other half were not. So we ended up going to an actual vote, and the idea of financing through the special assessment lost more narrowly than I thought it would, but it lost. So we ended up deciding to move forward with a PPA type model, and our sustainability committee created an RFP and went out for bid. Since I am in the solar business, I did not participate in that so that we could maintain the independence of that RFP process. So there were some other people on the sustainability committee who managed the whole RFP process for our building. So we did end up going with a third-party investor model and formed an LLC called West Willis Power and Light. And that group financed, and it ended up being all residents of the building. That wasn't a requirement, but that's how it ended up. And purchased the solar at no cost to the association. This is how the third-party or power purchase agreement model works. The investor buys the solar at no cost to the host, and that energy is sold from the solar array at a discount to the host. So it's a win-win for everyone. The installer that was selected was Michigan Solar Solutions, and they proposed, and we installed a 94.4 kilowatt array, which pretty much takes up our entire roof. The financial benefits of this system, I know Brandon was talking about trying to thread the needle through net metering and tax credits and other kinds of financial benefits. We did the same thing in our building, where we were able to get the interconnection approval prior to the expiration of net metering, although we are a tier 2 building, and so that gets watered down a little bit as far as any net metering benefits go. We were able to get it installed in time to claim a 30% tax credit in 2019. And in our neighborhood, we are in an opportunity zone, which is a relatively new benefit that's available to investment projects. And that basically says if you use capital gains to finance a project, doesn't have to be solar, it can be any kind of improvement project. But if you use capital gains, this opportunity zone benefit allows you to defer defer capital gains taxes. So all those were available to the investors in West Willis Power and Light. We signed the contract about a year ago, and construction began in October of 2019, and the system went live in December of last year. So I took some photos of the work in progress. We had to clear out some cars from our parking lot because Michigan Solar Solutions brought in a crane, and our building is 5 stories tall. So that was the best way to get that material up to our roof. You can see them swinging it up there. And in December, I went up on the roof and took some photos this is when it was obviously mostly installed, but not quite turned on yet. We have 3 inverters. 2 of them are 33.3 kilowatts, and the third one is a 20 kilowatt solar edge inverter. And you can get a sense of the layout. This is from the Solar Edge dashboard, the image on the right. The environmental benefits, which is a big driver for me personally and all of my solar advocacy, is something that I feel very proud about. This array has been running less than a year, and we've already saved close to 150,000 pounds of carbon dioxide, an equivalent of 1,100 trees planted. So, so I like to watch those numbers tick up, and I'm happy to be fighting climate change through the solar projects I'm involved with. I also have a little drone video that shows some flyovers of, it's just about a minute long, so I'm going to share that with you all. I'm going to make sure that I pull up the right screen here. Stand by. And then this will be my grand finale. So. So I didn't mention this explicitly, but it is a ballasted system, and you could probably tell that from looking at the video and those the stills that I showed. Does anyone have any questions? Thank you for your attention.
Utterly fascinating. A wonderful series of projects and really interesting stuff. A lot of ideas I've come up from watching this, and I think we need to organize some specific solar stories on creative financing and using nonprofits and working with condos, and just a lot of really interesting stuff. So thank you. Back to you. So any other questions for Diane or Diane Van Buren?
We have just a few minutes left. So I did want to share with you a little bit about how we've been working. Diane and I are business partners with D2 Solar, but we're also the co-chairs of the Renewable Energy Subcommittee, the Green Task Force in Detroit. And what we looked at was how far behind Detroit is with solar, and for many reasons. And I can't put it all on DDE, but mostly. So right now, Detroit is at about 3 megawatts of solar. And when we look at how we are compared with the rest of the city, we're about 93rd out of 100 major cities. So we've been pushing this with city council, and anyone who says we want to be the greenest city, we keep saying, well, then let's put policies in place. Let's work on this. So one of the things that we've been working on right now is that we have a sustainability action plan that the city has put out. They're saying they want to see 6 megawatts of solar by 2024 and 10 megawatts by 2029. Now, I love the expression, thinking a thing and doing a thing are 2 different things. So we want to be the doers. And so one thing that we started doing was putting together a assessment plan for nonprofits and faith-based here in Detroit. And we've done a solar readiness assessment. We have 16 participating so far. We're finding out for churches, nonprofits, etc., the interest is there. They want to do it. We're working with MIPL on this as well, and the Detroit 2030 district. It's always going to come down to financing. And so we have started our finance group so that we can, that discussion, as I mentioned earlier. So anyone who's interested in participating in that, give us a holler. And I'm a board member with Great Lakes Renewable Energy Association. We hope to be doing some grant proposal in the future. And this is a topic I think that is statewide, not just city, on how we can tackle this issue of financing in a way that makes sense. So that's it. Any questions before we sign off?
I have a question, Mark Clevey. Outstanding presentation, both of you. You guys are doing such important work there. I'm just so happy about it. Joel Harris, the Director of Sustainability for the City of Detroit, is a personal friend and a family friend. And for those of you who know Joel, you know that the city removed him from his job as Director of Sustainability as a cost savings measure. And
they call it furlough.
Yeah,
but
furlough.
We know.
Furlough.
We know.
I think that this is probably one of the greatest examples of idiotic public policy I've ever seen, to take sustainability and put it on the back burner as a cost savings measure is absolute insanity, especially looking at the projects that Diane has done and others. So those of you who have any sway at all in Detroit, I think that we need to do two things and do it loudly and constantly. One is we need to blow wind in the sails of D2E2 Energy and the work that the Dianes are doing up there. It is outstanding. It is embarrassing that Detroit, the arsenal of democracy, is that far behind on climate change and sustainability. It is absolutely disgusting. And number two, we need to bring Joel back as director. We need to remove any barriers that he is facing, bureaucratic barriers, have him answer only to the mayor, and take his budget and take it upscale, way upscale. And I can think of a number of organizations and foundations in Detroit, including Detroit DTE Energy, that could put forth several $1 million into Joel's budget for this purposes. So if you have any, if you got 2 minutes to spend today, contact everybody and anybody you know in Detroit and start pushing hard on these two fronts.
Thank you, Mark.
Work. You're doing fabulous.
And Mark, that is, we are trying through these community projects that Diane was talking about and that we are directly involved ourselves to raise awareness about solar in communities and increase the demand so that Detroit residents can make that connection for the value of solar. I mean, we have the most polluted zip code in the entire state here in Detroit. So environmental justice is a huge problem in Detroit. And that's just one more reason why sustainability should be a high priority. But it is not for all the reasons we talked about, and we don't have enough time on this call today. But one of our objectives is to get residents excited about solar, allow them to experience those benefits firsthand, and then grow the movement as a grassroots type of approach. But we do appreciate any policy movement that we can get on it. It's been a tough road to hoe from where we sit, quite honestly.
And high profile testimony in Lansing on why Detroit is so far behind the rest of the world in terms of sustainability and why that is happening, and perhaps get an investigation going on to what is it that they are doing right, i.e. you, and what are they doing wrong, i.e. not supporting you.
Well, okay. Mark, the simplest answer is DTE's headquarters are in Detroit.
There we go.
And so you know me, and you know my issues. And they fund a lot of projects in Detroit, including
megawatt system. But none of that has a community benefit. None of that spills over. And so it's something that with the mayor's office, DTE has very heavy sway.
Yes.
And you're right, they do, but it's not towards sustainability.
Okay, I hate to cut off this discussion. It's a great discussion.
John knows me.
I'm not cutting it off for the content. We just have one more. We just have one more presenter, and we're running a couple of minutes overboard. And I just want to be respectful. So
I'm just glad I filled my hour. Yay!
Diane's D2 Solar, Diane Cheklich, Diane Van Buren, and Brandon Knight. You all did an amazing job, and
thank you.
And we really thank you for everything. And we'll get back to you about the finance idea. I think we should create a subcommittee to work on that. We got some talented people that could really come together and talk about that. Okay, our last presenter of the day is another sponsor. It's S-Power. We again want to thank them for being a sponsor of the 2020 Solar Home Tour. And we have Will Nielsen, who is the engineering project manager for S-Power, who will be discussing a utility scale solar project called Cement City, which is nearby Jackson, Michigan, and in the backyard of Ken Zabara, as a matter of fact. So Will, we'll turn it over to you right now, and welcome.
Thank you very much. Do you mind if I share my screen so I can show everybody? Okay. It's good to be with you. Just, I know I've got about 10 minutes now, which will be just fine. I want to talk about a project that we're working on. It's a Cement City. It's a local township. We want to just cover a couple things, just a little bit about us, overview of the project, kind of the site itself, how we impact, the economics, some community engagement, and just an open house that we'll have later in October. So just about us, we're headquartered in Salt Lake City. We're called an independent power producer. So we develop and we actually own it, which is, we'll talk about that later, which is actually good for the community in my opinion. So we've got about 155 projects. You can kind of see all across the US where we're at. And then quite a bit in development. So, and we do wind and solar, and then working, adding battery storage as well to our portfolio. We're owned by AES and AIMCO, two large companies, and both have a lot of experience and a lot of depth. You can see AES has got 37 gigawatts of generation and quite a few operations. AIMCO, you can also see that they're a pension fund owner out of Canada. They give us access to our capital and finance, so that helps us, obviously. So just about the project. So it's in Columbia Township in Jackson County. It's a 20 megawatt AC, 26 megawatt DC. So I'll talk a little about that in a bit. On a single axis tracker system, which just means that they follow the sun as it goes throughout the day. And then our timing is to spring of 2021 to the end of year 2021 is when we'll do construction and finish. And then we're working on submitting a special land use permit here later in the month. And then just the offtake is the energy we sold to consumers' energy. So, I caught at the very end of it. Obviously, this is a solar project. It'll produce about 36,000 megawatt hours per year. Enough power for 3,000 homes annually. And then you can see the greenhouse gas emissions and what it offsets for CO2, and then an additional equivalent to carbon sequestered by about 33,000 acres of forest in 1 year. So just the details, and me being the project engineer, this is the stuff I care about more than anything. So, we'll use photovoltaics. You can kind of see what they're, roughly what it'll look like. They're mounted on piles or I-beams, and essentially they're run along in lengths. And you can see how we're all running down piles, a torque tube down the middle of it. And these basically follow the sun from east to west in the morning. The panels will be about 5 to 8 feet in height. And then the project will have a minimum of about 50 feet of minimum of 50-foot setback from the property line. And then the property will have a chain link fence around all sides of it. And then we will have an overhead distribution system going through the system. So where the site is, so let me blow this up or let you see it a little closer. Back over here, you know, it's the land is agricultural. It's a rural, low density, and it's in a development. It's at the edge of a township and county and far from the lake communities. So the way that we've set up the site is that there's not going to be any impacts to wetlands or threatened or endangered species nor cultural resources. And then during construction, we'll manage the air quality using our best practices and so forth. Just to give you a little closer view of how these things are set up. This site will have what are called 6 inverters, and these are these little boxes here. And so what happens is the panels are laid out in these arrays, and they create DC energy, and that's collected at these inverters, and it converts it into AC. From the AC, it all gets collected into a local substation here, where we bump up the voltage to transmit it on to consumers' energy. Just some of the economic impacts. So during the construction phase, we're looking at 200 to 250 direct employees throughout. After we're done, the impact is pretty small. You know, the number of direct operation full-time jobs is about 4, but the local tax revenue is pretty beneficial. Over 35 years, we estimate it's about $6 million in tax revenue. There we go. So just a little bit about our community engagement. You know, as I mentioned right at the start, we're not only do we develop and build them, but we operate them. So we're at the communities for 35 years. And so it is to our benefit and the communities that we do a partnership. So we invest in the local community. We're engaged, you know, like to be engaged with local schools and so forth through sponsorships, partnerships, and presentations and so forth. A few things that we've done thus far are these 3, but we'll continue to stay engaged and with the community while we build in thereafter as well. Just some contact information. Frank is the project developer, so he's the one who brings up all the way to near construction, and at that point is when I take over and help lead it through construction. So Frank I think he's on a river trip today, so I stepped in to help him. One of the things that we wanted to encourage you is, you know, if you could join us for the virtual open house. It's October 2020. You know, for directions and how to get there, go to spower.com and that'll lead you there. Also, in terms of, we'd appreciate any support we can get. I think we have a form that would help with talking points that we can provide, and like I said, it helps us in getting the projects developed. Okay, just probably should have pulled this up first, but just generally, you know, roughly you can see the general where we have the solar panel arrays, we transmit it onto consumers' energy, and then that's how it works back to the customer. Okay. Do you have questions?
Hey, this is Ken Zabera. I'm really excited about this because well, maybe we can talk about working together because we build, well, right now we're on site on 9 megawatt scale sites right now, but in Michigan. But you can almost see my house from your little map. So I live like less than a mile from there in Columbia Township.
Very nice.
I'm on Hyde Road, just north of Jefferson.
Great. And Ken, Ken, I don't know if Will was on when you gave your presentation. Introduce which firm you work with.
Oh, with Harvest Solar. I don't know if you've worked or talked with anybody from Harvest, but well, we can talk later if it's appropriate. But either way, I'm just excited, and I'll be at your open. I'll go to the open house, and looks like a great project.
Thanks, Ken.
And Will, just so you know, Ken has already submitted a letter of support to Frank. And then GLREA as an organization, we've already submitted a letter to Frank in support as well.
Appreciate it greatly. It's a big help to us,
Well, I have a question. This is Mark Levy. Are you talking to any municipal utilities in Michigan?
So we're contracted with Consumers Energy. That's who. Yep. So the way
from talking to municipals on other projects?
Right now we have 3. So this one, Cement City, we have one called Let's Creek, and then one in Pullman, which is on the western side of the state, that all are going to go together next year.
Okay.
We're hoping to continue doing that. Michigan seems like a great place to do this work.
But in other words, you cannot work with a customer in Michigan other than Consumers Energy.
I don't know that. I'm not close enough to how the origination works. I just know that on these 3 projects, they're contracted. The power purchase agreement is through Consumers Energy.
Okay. Just so you know, there's over 40 municipal utilities in Michigan.
Wow.
Holland, Lansing, there's many.
Well, this is David Arnosti with a technical question on your large-scale array.
Yeah.
How do you deal with day-to-day things like cutting the grass or animals burrowing in the ground? Do you have like a dedicated grounds crew?
Essentially, yeah. We have an operations group. So once we finish the construction, we'll do a turnover to this operations group, and they'll establish a maintenance, a PM system where they'll go through and make sure they cut the grass. They, maintain the system if there are problems with panels or inverters or other items to fix and repair. We actually have a control station all the way in Salt Lake that monitors it full time. And so we'll be able to track that as well. We watch, obviously for us, I love the company because we make money when the sun shines. And so we watch that very, very closely in terms of how the efficiency works and are we having troubles or not? And then we try to repair them quickly. But, better, we try to do the preventive maintenance ahead of time.
And following on that question, then this ties to a comment we heard from the East Lansing Community Solar Project, where part of the brownfield property was developed with native plants. Has there been any thought given to what kind of things are going to be growing, and will there be any ecological benefits that tie in?
Part of the special land use permit, we have a pollinator plan for the southern part down here to how we'll plant it, and then we will be using native. I don't think I'd have to look exactly what kind they are, but they are native plants. The goal for us, we don't want the plants to grow tall because then they'll shade the panels, but we want it to, we don't want it dusty and so forth, which I don't think is a problem in Michigan. It's a problem out here in the West, but so we will seed it and use native and local plants.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Any other questions for Will? Okay, well, thank you very much, and I'll definitely share about the virtual tour on October 21st with our members, because I think our members would be very interested in learning about this. So that completes our schedule of presenters. I once again want to thank our sponsors, Harvest Solar, S-Power, and Absolute Environmental Solutions. Does anybody wish to make any final comments about today's presentations? I hope it was informative, and any other final thoughts before we shut down?
Just thank you, John, for
kind of hosting this, and GLREA. That's a great event. Appreciate you putting it together.
Well, thank you very much. This is the first time we've done something of this scale involving this many people, and I apologize for a few of the technical hiccups that I contributed and a few others, but we're going to be learning from this experience, and I think all of us realize that even if once the pandemic goes away, I think there's a lot of usefulness of Zoom for putting together online type meetings or conferences or sharing experiences. And so I think we're going to continue to do this because it does make it so easy to bring folks together without having to drive. And so we'll keep learning from this and getting better as we go down the road. So again, I want to go ahead, Mark.
Final comment. If there's any of the people that are on, the 29 people that are on who are not members of Great Lakes Renewable Energy Association, we encourage you to join, and John will give you the website where you can go to join right now.
Well, it's just www.glrea.org.com, excuse me. And then there's a tab at the top called membership, and you can just go to the membership tab and scroll down, and you'll see the dues are just $30 a year, and they're tax deductible because we're a nonprofit 501c3 organization. So thanks, Mark, for the membership pitch. We're a totally independent organization, and our primary source of funding is our membership dues. And so our mission is to expand renewable energy in the state of Michigan. And we work on policy, we work on public education, and of course, we support our business members in hoping to grow their businesses and expand market share. And we work on both utility scale as well as small scale systems. So thank you very much, everybody. And I hope you have a wonderful rest of your Saturday afternoon and your weekend. And make sure to be safe regarding COVID, because we can't let our guard down. So thank you very much and have a wonderful day.
Thank you, John.
You're welcome, Diane.
See you all.
Bye-bye.